Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The horizon must not freeze. As I watched something that defied all the laws of nature I knew through the ice-covered window of Tango 7 station, I kept telling myself this. The line where the earth met the sky stopped moving. Suddenly, it had stopped. My name is Calvin Rhodes, and I've been working at the North Pole Research Station for 6 years. During that time, I've endured the merciless cold, endless darkness, and a level of isolation most people couldn't handle. I thought I'd seen everything the North had to offer. I was wrong. It started 3 weeks into our winter rotation. Brooke Anders and I were the only personnel stationed at Tango 7, a weather and seismic monitoring outpost 70 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The nearest human beings were at Station Kilo, almost 200 miles south. We had satellite phones, emergency beacons, and enough supplies to last 8 months. What we didn't have was an explanation for what was about to happen. The afternoon it began, I was outside taking magnetic field readings, standard procedure. The kind of thing I'd done 1,000 times before. The sun had set weeks ago and wouldn't rise again for another month. We lived in perpetual twilight. That strange blue-black darkness that's never quite night, but never day either. The temperature was minus 38 Fahrenheit. Cold enough that your breath crystallizes before it leaves your mouth. Cold enough that exposed skin freezes in under 2 minutes. I was bundled in 3 layers of thermal gear, my face protected by a balaclava and goggles. I was checking the magnetometer near the eastern perimeter when I saw it. A line of light, not Aurora Borealis. I know the northern lights. I've photographed them, studied them, written reports about them. This was different. The auroras dance and shimmer, ribbons of green and purple that ripple across the sky like curtains in a breeze. This light was perfectly horizontal, perfectly still. It stretched across the entire eastern horizon, maybe 2 degrees above where the earth met the sky. A thin band of pale yellow light, completely motionless. Like someone had drawn a line with a ruler and a highlighter across the darkness. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds, my breath coming faster, fogging my goggles. Then I raised my radio. "Brooke, you seeing this?" Static. "Brooke, come in, check the eastern sky. Do you see that light?" More static. Then her voice, faint and crackling. "Calvin, what?" The transmission cut out. I tried again. "Brooke, the eastern horizon, there's a..." Nothing. The radio was dead. Not just silent, but completely dead. No static, no carrier wave. Like someone had flipped a switch and turned off every radio frequency on Earth. That's when I felt it. The silence. You know how the Arctic is supposed to be quiet? That's mostly true, but there's always something. Wind rushing over ice, the distant crack of thermal expansion, the hum of your own breathing in your hood. But this was different. This was absolute silence, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums like deep water, the kind that makes you wonder if you've gone deaf. I turned back toward the station. It was only 50 yards away, a cluster of insulated modules connected by enclosed corridors, all of it sitting on steel pylons driven into the permafrost. The windows glowed with warm yellow light. Home. Safety. The light on the horizon was brighter now. I started walking back, my boots crunching on the frozen ground. Each step seemed too loud in that oppressive silence. Behind me, I could feel that line of light, could sense it even though I wasn't looking at it anymore. Don't look back. That's what every instinct was screaming. Don't look back." I looked back. The line had moved. It was higher now, maybe 5 degrees above the horizon. And it was wider. No longer a thin pencil stroke, but a band, maybe the width of my thumb, held at arm's length. And it was pulsing, not quickly. One long, slow pulse every 10 seconds or so. Like a heartbeat, like something breathing. I ran. The distance to the station had never seemed longer. My breath came in ragged gasps, my legs pumping, my heart hammering against my ribs. The frozen ground was uneven, and I nearly fell twice. The light from the windows seemed impossibly far away. When I reached the outer airlock, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the latch. The heavy door swung open, and I stumbled inside, hitting the emergency close button. The door slammed shut with a pneumatic hiss, and the inner door unlocked automatically. I burst into the main corridor, yanking off my goggles and balaclava. "Brooke!" She emerged from the communications room, her face pale. "The radio's dead. Everything's dead. Satellite, emergency beacon, even the backup systems. It's like something just shut it all off." "I know," I said, still breathing hard. "I tried to reach you. What were you trying to tell me?" I pointed toward the eastern side of the station. "Look outside." We moved to the observation room, a small space with large insulated windows facing all 4 directions. The eastern window gave us a clear view of the horizon. The light was still there. Brighter now. Wider. And it was definitely pulsing, that slow, rhythmic pulse that made my skin crawl. Brooke moved closer to the window, her breath fogging the glass. "What is that?" "I don't know. Aurora? No. Reflection? Ice crystals?" "Brooke, ice crystals don't pulse." She turned to look at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Brooke was ex-military, had served in Afghanistan, had seen things that gave her nightmares. I'd never seen her scared before. "We need to document this," she said quietly. We spent the next hour trying every piece of equipment we had. Cameras, spectrometers, radiation detectors. Everything worked fine inside the station. But the moment we tried to record or measure anything outside, the equipment failed. Not malfunctioned, failed. Batteries that had been fully charged suddenly read empty. Digital displays went dark. Mechanical shutters refused to open. It was as if something didn't want to be documented. The light continued to pulse on the horizon. We stood at the window, watching it, neither of us speaking. What was there to say? We were trained scientists, people who dealt in measurable phenomena and reproducible results. This was neither measurable nor reproducible. This was impossible. Around what should have been midnight, Brooke spoke up. "I need to check the perimeter sensors." We had motion detectors and cameras positioned at intervals around the station, part of our security and wildlife monitoring system. They fed into a central display in the control room. We walked down the corridor together. Neither of us wanted to be alone. The control room was small, barely 10 feet square, lined with monitors and control panels. Brooke sat down at the main console and pulled up the sensor display. Every perimeter sensor was offline. "That's not possible," she muttered, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "They're on independent power systems. Thermal batteries good for 3 years. They can't all fail at once." But they had. She pulled up the camera feeds, static on every screen. 12 cameras, all showing nothing but white noise. "Wait," I said, leaning closer. "Camera 7, there's something." One of the screens showed something different. Not static exactly, but a pattern. Light and dark shapes moving in slow, rhythmic waves. Like watching something breathe through heavy snow. Brooke increased the contrast and sharpened the image. We both stopped breathing. The camera was pointed north, toward an empty expanse of ice and snow. But it wasn't empty anymore. Something was standing there, or hovering. It was hard to tell through the distortion. A shape, vertical, maybe 20 feet tall, maybe more. The edges weren't clear, seemed to shift and blur like heat shimmer, but there was definitely something there. And it was pulsing, in perfect rhythm with the light on the eastern horizon. "Turn it off," I heard myself say. "What?" "Turn it off. Turn all of it off." Brooke's hand hovered over the keyboard. "Calvin, do it. Now." She killed the power to the monitors, the screens went dark, and suddenly the only sound was our breathing and the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. We sat in the darkness of the control room, and I tried to make sense of what we'd seen. A light on the horizon that shouldn't exist. Equipment failures that defied explanation. A shape that might have been there, or might have been a glitch in a failing camera. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a glitch. "We should radio for help," Brooke said quietly. "The radio's dead. We should try the emergency beacon. Also dead. The satellite phone?" "Brooke," I said, turning to look at her in the dim emergency lighting. "Everything that could call for help is offline. Whatever that thing is out there, it doesn't want us calling for help." She was quiet for a long moment, then, "What do you think it wants?" I didn't have an answer. We returned to the observation room. The light on the horizon was even brighter now, had expanded to cover maybe 15 degrees of the sky. The pulsing had become more rapid, maybe once every 5 seconds. And as we watched, something new happened. The light began to rise, not quickly, slowly, almost imperceptibly, but it was definitely moving upward, climbing into the sky. As it rose, it maintained that perfect horizontal line, that impossible straightness that no natural phenomenon could produce. "It's coming closer," Brooke whispered. She was right. The light wasn't just rising, it was approaching, moving toward the station with a slow, inevitable momentum. Like a tide coming in. Like something that couldn't be stopped. I checked my watch, 3 a.m. We'd been watching for almost 6 hours. "We need to decide something," I said. "Do we stay here or do we try to make it to the emergency shelter?" Station Tango 7 had a backup shelter located half a mile to the west, buried under 15 feet of snow and ice. It was designed as a refuge in case the main station was compromised. It had its own power, its own supplies, its own communications equipment. In this cold, Brooke shook her head. "We'd never make it half a mile, not in the dark, not with that thing out there. So we stay. We stay." We moved away from the windows and retreated to the central hub, the most interior room in the station. No windows, thick walls. We pulled mattresses from our sleeping quarters and set up a makeshift shelter. Gathered food and water. Collected every flashlight and glow stick we could find. And we waited. The station's walls were well insulated, but we could feel it. A vibration. Not sound exactly, but something felt through the bones. That same slow pulse transmitted through the frozen ground, through the steel pylons, through the very air itself. Getting stronger, getting closer. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke to Brooke shaking my shoulder. Calvin, wake up." I sat up, disoriented. "What? What is it?" "Listen." I listened. At first, I heard nothing. Then I realized that was the problem. The vibration had stopped. Everything was completely still. Silent. The kind of silence that made my ears ring. "How long was I asleep?" I asked. "Maybe an hour. I've been monitoring the systems. Everything came back online about 10 minutes ago. Radio, satellite, cameras, sensors, all of it, just turned back on. The light? Gone. The horizon looks normal." We made our way back to the observation room. Brooke was right. The eastern horizon showed only the usual deep twilight of an Arctic winter. No strange lights, no pulsing, nothing. I checked the perimeter cameras, all functioning normally. The space where we'd seen that shape was empty, just snow and ice. "It's like it was never there," Brooke said. But we both knew it had been there. We'd seen it, felt it. I tried the radio. "Station Kilo, this is Tango 7. Do you copy?" Static. Then, "Tango 7, this is Kilo. Good to hear from you. You guys have been radio silent for almost 8 hours. Everything okay?" 8 hours. We'd lost 8 hours. "Kilo, we experienced some equipment malfunctions. Everything seems to be working now. We're fine." "Copy that, Tango 7. Let us know if you need technical support. Kilo out." I lowered the radio and looked at Brooke. She was staring at the eastern horizon, her face unreadable. "What do we tell them?" she asked quietly. "Nothing." "Calvin, who's going to believe us? We have no evidence, no recordings, no measurements. All we have is a story about lights and shapes and missing time. They'll pull us out for psychological evaluation." She knew I was right. In the Arctic research community, mental health was taken seriously. Too seriously. One report of hallucinations or delusions, and you were on the next plane south. So we just pretend it didn't happen? Do you have a better idea? She didn't answer. We spent the rest of the day trying to return to normal, running diagnostics on the equipment, taking routine measurements, preparing meals, all the mundane tasks that made up our daily routine. But everything had changed. The station didn't feel safe anymore. Every shadow seemed deeper. Every sound seemed louder. We found ourselves checking the windows constantly, watching the horizon, waiting for it to come back. Night fell, or rather the twilight deepened to its darkest blue-black. Brooke was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I went to do one last perimeter check before we sealed up for the night. I pulled on my thermal gear and stepped into the airlock. As I waited for the pressure to equalize, I looked through the small window in the outer door, and I froze. There, in the snow about 30 yards from the station, was something that hadn't been there before. Footprints. Not human, not animal, just impressions. Perfectly circular depressions in the snow, each about 4 feet across, arranged in a pattern that led from the north and circled the station before heading back the way they came. No tracks between them. Just those circular impressions, spaced about 10 feet apart, as if something had stepped, but without dragging its feet or leaving any other marks. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding. Then I hit the intercom. "Brooke, don't come to the airlock, but you need to see something." She joined me a minute later. We stood there together, looking out at those impossible footprints. "What made those?" she whispered. "I don't know." "Should we go out and examine them?" Every instinct I had screamed no. Tomorrow, in the light, with full documentation. We returned to the central hub. Dinner was forgotten. We sat in silence, both of us thinking the same thing. It had been here, while we slept. While the station was sealed and secure, it had been right outside, and it would be back. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Brooke. We sat in the observation room, lights dimmed, watching those circular impressions in the snow. They didn't change, didn't disappear. They just sat there, perfectly circular, perfectly spaced, a testament to something that shouldn't exist. Around 4 a.m., Brooke broke the silence. My grandmother was Inuit, from a village near Point Hope. I glanced at her. In 6 months of working together, she'd never mentioned this. "She used to tell stories," Brooke continued, her voice quiet, "about things that lived in the ice. Not spirits exactly. Not animals. Something else. things that existed in the spaces between. She said they were old, older than humans, older than the ice itself. What did they want? She never said. Maybe they didn't want anything. Maybe they were just there, like we're here, sharing the same space. I turned back to the window. Did she ever see them? She never said she didn't. Dawn came slowly, the way it always does in the Arctic. A gradual lightening of the darkness, the deep blue-black fading to a lighter blue-gray. Not daylight, but the closest we'd get for another month. We suited up and went outside together. Neither of us wanted to be alone. The temperature had dropped overnight, -42. Cold enough that the metal clasps on our gear threatened to freeze to our gloves. We moved slowly, carefully toward the nearest circular impression. Up close, it was even stranger. The snow inside the circle was completely smooth, not pressed down, not melted, just smooth, like it had been polished. The edges were perfectly defined, as sharp as if they'd been cut with a laser. I knelt down, pulled off one glove despite the cold, and touched the surface. It was warm, not hot, but noticeably warmer than the surrounding snow. Maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 degrees warmer than the air temperature. That's not possible, Brooke said, reading the thermal scanner. There's no heat source, no residual radiation, no chemical trace, it's just warm. We documented everything. Photographs, measurements, samples. This time, all our equipment worked perfectly, which somehow made it worse. As if whatever had been here was now allowing us to see what it left behind. We followed the trail of impressions. They circled the station twice, moving in a perfect spiral that got tighter with each revolution. The final impression was less than 10 feet from the outer airlock door, right where it had stopped, and watched. We need to report this, Brooke said. Report what? That something walked in circles around our station and left warm footprints. It's evidence, Calvin. Of what? We don't know what made these. We don't know what we saw. All we know is that something happened that we can't explain. You really think headquarters is going to believe us? She was quiet for a long moment, her breath creating small clouds in the frigid air. What if it happens to someone else? What if the next station isn't so lucky? That stopped me. She was right. If this was real, if something was out here, other people needed to know. We'll file a preliminary report, I said finally. Document the impressions, the equipment failures, the light phenomenon. We'll present it as an anomaly requiring investigation. No wild speculation, just the facts. And if they ask what we think caused it, we say we don't know. We spent the rest of the morning writing the report, choosing every word carefully, making sure we sounded rational, scientific, objective. The report was 12 pages long and said almost nothing. We transmitted it via satellite at noon. The response came 6 hours later. Station Tango 7, this is Dr. Yuki Tanaka at Northern Operations. I've reviewed your anomaly report. Interesting findings. I'm scheduling a flyover with our aerial survey team next week, weather permitting. In the meantime, continue standard observations and let me know immediately if the phenomenon repeats. Tanaka out. That was it. No questions about our mental state. No orders to evacuate. Just acknowledgement and a promise of investigation. Maybe it would be okay. Maybe it was over. It wasn't over. 3 nights later, it came back. I was in my sleeping quarters trying to read, when the lights flickered. Not out, just a brief dimming, like something had drawn power from the grid. I set down my book and listened. That vibration. That pulse. It was back. I grabbed my radio. Brooke, you feel that? I'm in the observation room. Calvin, you need to see this. I ran. My heart was already racing before I reached the observation room, my hands shaking as I grabbed the door frame. Brooke was standing at the eastern window, her face lit by an impossible light. The line was back, but it was different this time. Not on the horizon, in the air. About 30 degrees up, stretching from north to south as far as we could see. And it wasn't yellow anymore, it was blue, a deep electric blue that hurt to look at directly. And it was close, maybe a mile away, maybe less. As we watched, it began to descend, slowly, deliberately, coming down toward the frozen ground like something landing. "We need to get to the shelter," Brooke said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the fear underneath. "It's too late. It's between us and the shelter." Then we sealed the station and the lights went out. Not just in the observation room, everywhere. The entire station plunged into absolute darkness. Emergency lights should have kicked in automatically. They didn't. I fumbled for my flashlight, found it, clicked it on. Nothing. "Brooke? My flashlight's dead too." Her voice came from somewhere to my right. "Everything's dead." We stood in that total darkness, and the silence pressed down on us like a physical weight. No hum of life support, no whisper of air circulation. Nothing. Then I felt it. Heat. The station was warming up. Not slowly, rapidly. I could feel sweat breaking out on my forehead, my hands getting clammy inside my thermal gear. "The heating system's off," Brooke said. "It should be getting colder, not warmer." The heat was coming from outside. I moved carefully through the darkness, feeling my way along the wall until I reached the window. The glass was warm to the touch, getting warmer. And then there was light. Not from inside the station, from outside. That electric blue light, so bright it turned the darkness of the station into sharp shadows. I shielded my eyes and looked out. The line had landed. No, not landed. It was hovering maybe 10 feet above the ground, perfectly horizontal, stretching away in both directions until it vanished into the distance. And it was massive, maybe 20 feet tall, but infinitely thin. Like someone had taken a knife and cut a glowing slit in reality itself. As I watched, something emerged from it. Not walked out, emerged, like watching something push through a membrane. First, a shape that might have been a head, then shoulders, then a torso. It was hard to focus on. The edges seemed to blur and shift, but it was definitely there, and it was tall, maybe 15 feet, maybe more. It stood there for a moment, completely motionless. Then it turned, and looked directly at the window where I was standing. I can't describe its face. I'm not sure it had one, but I knew it was looking at me. Knew it could see me, knew that it knew I was there. I stumbled backward, colliding with Brooke in the darkness. We grabbed each other, holding on like drowning people, as that thing outside began to move toward the station. It didn't walk. It glided. Its movements were smooth, effortless, as if the ground didn't exist for it. As if friction and gravity were optional. It reached the station wall and stopped. The heat intensified. The walls began to glow, that same electric blue light bleeding through the insulation. I could hear metal creaking, expanding, groaning under some incredible force. "The airlock," Brooke whispered. "It's at the airlock." We heard it. A sound like wind, but not wind. Like voices, but not voices. A rushing, whispering cacophony that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The inner airlock door was 50 feet away, down a corridor that had never seemed longer. We ran. Behind us, we heard the outer door open. Not break, not force, just open. As if it had been unlocked, as if it had been invited in. We reached the central hub and sealed the pressure door behind us, spinning the manual lock until it engaged. The door was designed to hold against explosive decompression. I prayed it would hold against this. The whispering grew louder, closer. We could hear it moving through the station, that gliding, effortless movement. Searching. "The emergency shelter," I said. "It's our only chance. We'll never make it half a mile. We stay here. We die." She knew I was right. We grabbed emergency packs, pulling on extra layers of thermal gear with shaking hands. The temperature in the hub was over 90 degrees now, and rising. The heat was following that thing through the station. We moved to the western emergency exit, a small hatch designed for evacuation. I spun the lock and pushed it open. Cold air hit us like a wall. The temperature differential was over 130 degrees. My lungs seized, my eyes watering instantly as the moisture froze on my eyelashes. But we ran. The emergency shelter was marked by a small beacon, a chemical light that would burn for years without power. In the darkness and cold, it was the only navigation we had. We stumbled through the snow, the frozen ground treacherous under our feet. Behind us, the station blazed with that electric blue light. Every window, every seam. Like someone had filled it with lightning. We were maybe 300 yards away when it happened. The station exploded, not with fire, with light. A column of that electric blue brilliance shot straight up into the sky, illuminating the entire landscape. I could see for miles in every direction. Mountains, ice fields, the absolute emptiness of the Arctic. And I could see shapes, dozens of them, hundreds, standing motionless in the snow, scattered across the landscape like statues. Some were close, some were distant. All of them tall, all of them watching. The light faded. Darkness returned. When my night vision recovered, the shapes were gone. The station was gone too. Not destroyed, just gone. Where it had stood, there was only smooth snow. Perfectly smooth. As if the station had never been there. We stood in the cold and the darkness, staring at that empty space. Did that really just happen? Brooke's voice was small, distant. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind couldn't process what I'd seen. We made it to the emergency shelter just before hypothermia set in. The hatch was buried under snow, and it took us 20 minutes to dig it out with our hands. By the time we got the hatch open, I couldn't feel my fingers. Inside, the shelter was exactly as advertised. Warm. Supplied, safe. The emergency radio worked, the lights worked, everything worked. We called for help. The rescue team arrived 36 hours later. They found us wrapped in thermal blankets, barely conscious from exhaustion and dehydration. We were transported to Station Kilo, then flown to Fairbanks for medical evaluation. The doctors said we'd suffered from exposure and acute stress. They said we'd experienced shared hallucinations, not uncommon in extreme isolation and cold. They said the station had been destroyed by a catastrophic system failure, probably a gas explosion. They said a lot of things, none of them true. But we had no evidence, no recordings, no measurements. All we had were our memories and each other. The official report blamed the incident on a series of equipment malfunctions and operator error. We were cleared of negligence but removed from Arctic duty, pending psychological evaluation. We never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I think about what Brooke's grandmother said. About things that live in the ice. Things that are just there, sharing the same space. And I wonder how many other stations have been erased. How many other researchers have seen things they can't explain. How many stories are out there, unreported, unbelieved. How many people know the truth but can't say it. Because who would believe us? I met Brooke for coffee 6 months later in Anchorage. She looked different, thinner. There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. I probably looked the same. We sat in a booth at the back of a diner, far from the windows, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. What was there to say? We told our story. No one believed us. Life moved on. Except it hadn't, not really. "I can't sleep," Brooke said finally. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them. Those shapes, standing in the snow, watching. Me too. I went back to the site last month. That surprised me." "You went back?" "I had to know. Had to see it for myself in the light. Confirm that it really happened." She stirred her coffee, not looking at me. "There's nothing there, Calvin. No debris, no crater, no trace that Station Tango 7 ever existed. It's just empty tundra, smooth and untouched. What did you expect to find? Something. Anything." She finally looked up at me. "I talked to some people. Researchers who've worked other Arctic stations. Off the record, quietly." I leaned forward. "And? I'm not the only one. Over the past 20 years, there have been at least 7 incidents similar to ours. Equipment failures, strange lights, lost time, shapes in the snow. All of them were classified as equipment malfunctions or psychological episodes. All of them were buried." 7 incidents we know about," I said. "Exactly." She pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. I made copies of everything I could find. Reports, incident logs, even some classified documents that I probably shouldn't have. I opened the folder. Inside were dozens of pages, printouts, and handwritten notes. I scanned through them, and my blood ran cold. Station Whiskey 3, 2003. Complete communications blackout lasting 14 hours. Crew reported vertical lights and unexplained heat signatures. Station abandoned after structural integrity concerns. Official cause: electrical fire. Station Papa 9, 2008. Both crew members found unconscious outside the station. Neither had memory of the previous 36 hours. Equipment showed no signs of malfunction after the fact. Official cause: carbon monoxide exposure. Except tests showed no CO in their blood. Station Echo 4, 2010. Entire station reported missing by supply aircraft. Found 6 days later, 3 miles from its original location. Crew had no memory of moving it. Official cause: severe weather and disorientation. Except there had been no severe weather. "It's been happening for decades," Brooke said. "Maybe longer. Maybe since the first humans came to the Arctic. These things, they're territorial or curious, or both. Why don't they just kill us? They could, easily. I don't think they want to kill us. I think they want to study us, understand us. Maybe they're as confused by us as we are by them." I closed the folder, my hands shaking. "What are we supposed to do with this? Go public? No one will believe us. We tried." "I know, but we can't do nothing." She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Those impressions in the snow, the warm spots, that's physical evidence, Calvin. Evidence that lasted. If we could catch one in the act, document it properly. Absolutely not. I'm not going back out there. We have to. Someone has to. This is bigger than us, bigger than our fear." I pulled my hand away. "You're talking about going back to one of the most isolated places on Earth to hunt something that might be extraterrestrial. Do you hear how that sounds? I hear exactly how it sounds. Insane, impossible, suicidal." She leaned back in the booth. "But what if we're not the crazy ones? What if everyone else is just unwilling to see what's right in front of them?" We argued for another hour. In the end, I said I'd think about it. That was 4 months ago. I did think about it, every day, every night. Lying in bed in my apartment in Seattle, working a desk job that bored me to tears, I thought about those shapes in the snow, that electric blue light, the way my entire reality had been upended in one night. And I thought about all the other stations, all the other researchers, all the other encounters that had been buried and forgotten. 3 weeks ago, I got an email from Brooke. Subject line, "I found something." The email contained a single attachment, a photograph taken from a commercial satellite. The image showed a remote section of Arctic tundra, maybe 50 miles from where Station Tango 7 had been. And in that image, clear as day, were dozens of those circular impressions, arranged in patterns, geometric patterns that couldn't be natural. At the bottom of the email, she'd written, "They're still there. They've always been there. We just need to look." I stared at that photograph for 3 hours. Then I bought a plane ticket to Fairbanks. We met at a gear shop, surrounded by thermal suits and emergency beacons and all the equipment we'd need for what Brooke was calling an independent research expedition, which was a polite way of saying we were going back to the Arctic without authorization to look for aliens. "This is a bad idea," I said, examining a cold weather camera. "Probably the worst idea either of us has ever had. We could die out there." "We could." She picked up a portable power generator. "Or we could finally get proof. Real proof. The kind that can't be dismissed or explained away. And if they don't want to be documented, if they do to us what they did to the station." She set down the generator and looked at me. "Then at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives wondering." We flew to Prudhoe Bay and hired a bush pilot to drop us at the coordinates from the satellite image. He thought we were crazy, going out there with winter coming on. We didn't correct him. The pilot left us at sunset, which meant we had maybe 3 hours of twilight before the darkness set in. We worked quickly, setting up a small shelter and positioning cameras and sensors in a grid pattern around the site. The circular impressions were exactly as they appeared in the photograph. Dozens of them arranged in concentric circles and radiating lines, some kind of pattern that I couldn't decipher. They were old, filled with wind-blown snow, but still visible, still warm. "It's like a landing site," Brooke said, taking measurements. "Or a gathering place, something they returned to." We worked through the night, documenting everything. The equipment worked perfectly, no failures, no malfunctions. It was as if whatever presence had interfered before was allowing us to see this, or wanted us to see it. Around 3 a.m., Brooke noticed something. "Calvin, the pattern, look at it from above." I pulled up the overhead view on her tablet. From ground level, the impressions had seemed random, scattered. But from above... "It's a map," I breathed. She was right. The pattern matched the coastline of the Arctic Ocean. Every major inlet, every peninsula, mapped out in those circular impressions with impossible precision. "Why would they map the Arctic?" Brooke asked. "Maybe they're not mapping it, maybe they're marking it, territory. Or maybe they're trying to tell us something. We never found out." At 3:47 a.m., all our equipment shut down simultaneously. Every camera, every sensor, every light. I checked my watch. It had stopped. The vibrations started. That slow, steady pulse we remembered from Station Tango 7. "It's here," Brooke whispered. The eastern horizon began to glow. Not the electric blue from before, gold, a warm golden light that seemed almost welcoming. It rose slowly, that same impossible horizontal line climbing into the sky. But this time, we were ready. Brooke activated the backup camera, a mechanical film model that didn't rely on batteries or electronics. I prepared the spectrometer, a simple prism and notepad setup that couldn't be interfered with. The light reached its zenith and stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Then, shapes began to emerge from it. Not one, not two, Dozens, maybe hundreds. They moved in perfect synchronization, gliding down from that golden line like water flowing upward. They touched the snow and began to move toward us. "Get the shots," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Get everything." Brooke's camera clicked. Once, twice, 3 times. The shapes stopped about 30 yards away. They stood in a perfect semicircle, surrounding us but not approaching. Up close, they were even harder to focus on. My eyes kept sliding away as if my brain refused to process what it was seeing. But I could make out some details. Height, maybe 12 to 15 feet. Proportions that were almost human but stretched, elongated. No clear features, just presence. And that feeling of being watched, being studied, being measured. One of them moved forward. Not threatening, just closer. It stopped about 10 feet away, and then I heard it. Not sound, not exactly. More like a feeling, a pressure, like someone speaking directly into my thoughts. "Why do you return?" The question wasn't in English, wasn't in any language, but I understood it perfectly. "We want to understand," I said out loud. My voice sounded small in that vast emptiness. Understand what? What you are, why you're here, what you want. A pause, then, "We have been here since the ice was born. We will be here when the ice dies. We are not visitors, you are." I felt Brooke grab my arm. She'd heard it too. "We don't mean any harm," she said. "We just want to document, to learn." You cannot document what you cannot perceive. You cannot learn what you cannot comprehend. Your tools measure shadows. Your eyes see reflections. You are children holding candles in the sun. "Then help us understand," I said. "Show us what you are." The being was silent for a long moment. Then, "You are not ready. Your species is not ready. You divide the world into known and unknown, real and unreal. You seek to categorize, to control, to possess. You cannot possess the infinite." "What are you?" Brooke asked. "Please. We need to know." "We are what we have always been. We are the spaces between, the silence before sound, the darkness before light. We are neither matter nor energy. We are the potential from which both emerge." My head was spinning. Nothing it said made sense, yet somehow I understood every word. "The stations," I said. "The disappearances. The missing time. Why?" When your kind builds structures in our spaces, we observe, we watch. Sometimes we reach out. Sometimes you see us. Most times you do not. We mean you no harm, but we cannot always prevent it. Your reality is fragile. Contact causes disruption. Is that what happened to Station Tango 7? Disruption? Your structure existed in multiple states simultaneously. Solid and not solid. Present and not present. We tried to stabilize it. We failed. It was removed. Removed where? The being tilted its head, a gesture that seemed almost human. Nowhere, everywhere. When something exists in all states at once, it exists in no state at all. It simply stops. I felt sick. The station hadn't been destroyed. It had been erased, removed from reality itself. "Will you do that to us?" Brooke asked quietly. "No. You came here willingly. You came with open perception. You are not disrupting. You are observing. This is acceptable. Can we take evidence back? Photographs? Measurements? Something to prove this is real? You may take what your limited tools can capture, but understand, what you show will not be believed. Cannot be believed. Your kind is not ready to accept what they cannot control. The being began to move backward, rejoining the others in the semicircle. One day, perhaps, you will understand. One day your species may evolve past the need for proof, for evidence, for certainty. Until then, we wait. We watch. We exist. Wait, I called out. Will we see you again? You see us every day, in the corner of your eye, in the space between thoughts, in the moment before sleep. We have never left. You have only forgotten how to look. The shapes began to fade, dissolving back into that golden light. The light contracted, pulling back into a single point on the horizon, and then it was gone. Our equipment powered back on. My watch started running. Everything returned to normal, except nothing would ever be normal again. We checked the camera, 23 exposures. When we developed them later, 19 showed only empty snow. 4 showed strange light anomalies and blurred shapes that could have been anything. It was enough to raise questions, not enough to prove anything. We packed up at dawn and waited for the pilot. He arrived on schedule, took one look at us, and asked if we were okay. We said we were fine. We flew back to Fairbanks in silence. That was 3 months ago. Brooke and I published our findings in a small journal that specializes in unexplained phenomena. We presented our evidence, the photographs, the measurements, the patterns in the snow. We told our story as clearly and rationally as we could. The response was predictable. Some people found it interesting. Most dismissed it as wishful thinking or fraud. A few called us liars or attention seekers. But we also heard from others. Researchers, scientists, military personnel, people who had seen things they couldn't explain, people who had been told to keep quiet, people who had spent years thinking they were alone in their experiences. We weren't alone. We never had been. The shapes in the Arctic continued to appear, sometimes in satellite images, sometimes in pilot reports, sometimes in the testimony of indigenous people who have known about them for generations, but whose stories have been dismissed as folklore. They're still out there. They've always been out there, existing in spaces we don't understand, following rules we can't comprehend. And sometimes, late at night, I think about what that being told us, that we see them every day, that they've never left. I think about the shadows in the corner of my eye, the feeling of being watched when I'm alone, the sense that reality is thinner than we think, that there are layers to existence we simply can't perceive. I think about the fact that the Arctic is warming, the ice is dying, and I wonder what will happen when their habitat is gone, when the spaces between begin to close. Will they adapt? Will they leave? Or will they reveal themselves at last, stepping out of the shadows and into a world that still isn't ready to see them? I don't know the answer. Maybe no one does. But I do know this. We are not alone on this planet. We have never been alone. We share this world with things that exist in ways we cannot measure, cannot predict, cannot control. The frozen horizon holds secrets that humanity is not ready to face. But one day, whether we're ready or not, those secrets will emerge. And when they do, everything will change. Until then, I keep watching, waiting, looking for that moment when the horizon freezes again, when the impossible becomes undeniable. Because they told me we would understand one day, that our species would evolve past the need for certainty. I think about that a lot. I think about what it means to truly understand something beyond understanding. And I wonder if I'll live long enough to find out. Last week, Brooke called me. She'd been contacted by a research team planning an extended expedition to the Arctic Circle. They wanted experienced personnel, people who weren't afraid of the unknown. "Are you interested?" she asked. I looked out my apartment window at the Seattle skyline. Safe. comfortable, normal. A life where I could pretend that night never happened, where I could convince myself it was all just stress and isolation and shared delusion. But I couldn't pretend. Not anymore. "When do we leave?" I said. 3 weeks. We'll be out there for 6 months. Through the winter, through the darkness. Perfect. Because here's what I learned in the Arctic. Some things can't be proven. Some things can only be experienced. And once you've experienced them, once you've stood in the darkness and felt that presence, that awareness, you can never go back to not knowing. The frozen horizon is calling again, and this time I'm ready to answer. There are only 2 sounds in the Arctic night: the growl of the snowcat engine and your own breathing inside your hood. Everything else is silence. I'm Jonah Mercer, and I've been driving supply runs across the northern Alaska tundra for 3 years now. 3 years of darkness, cold, and empty white nothing stretching in every direction. Most people would go crazy out here. The isolation, the monotony, the knowledge that if something goes wrong, help is hours away at best. But I liked it. Past tense, liked. That changed 2 months ago on a routine fuel run to Depot 7. I remember every detail of that day. How could I forget? When something impossible happens, your brain holds on to every moment, every sensation, like evidence at a crime scene. Except there was no crime. Just an absence, a gap. 45 minutes that GPS says never happened, but my odometer says did. Let me start at the beginning. Station Arcturus was our home base, a research outpost monitoring seismic activity and atmospheric conditions about 90 miles south of the Arctic Ocean. 6 people lived there during the winter months: 3 scientists, 2 technicians, and me. The supply driver, the guy who kept everyone alive by hauling fuel, food, and equipment across frozen hell. The snowcat was my office, a massive, tracked vehicle built like a tank, with a heated cab and enough storage to carry 2 tons of cargo. It wasn't fast, maybe 15 miles per hour on good terrain, but it could go anywhere. Through snow, over ice, across frozen rivers. When you're that far north, roads don't exist. You make your own path. Elise Caro ran communications and logistics. She was ex-Air Force, sharp as a knife, and the only person at Arcturus who seemed to actually enjoy the isolation. While the scientists complained about the dark, and the technicians counted days until rotation, Elise treated the Arctic like it was exactly where she wanted to be. We worked together on every supply run. I'd drive, she'd monitor. GPS coordinates, satellite tracking, weather updates. She kept me safe from her desk while I kept everyone alive with my deliveries. It was a good system, until it wasn't. The day it happened started normal. Well, as normal as anything gets when the sun hasn't risen in 2 months and the temperature is 40 below zero. I woke at 0600 hours. The station was quiet, everyone else still asleep. I made coffee in the small kitchen, thick and black, and checked the weather report on the main terminal. Clear skies, no storms, winds under 10 miles per hour. Perfect conditions for the run to Depot 7. Depot 7 was a small fuel cache about 30 miles northeast of Arcturus. Just a reinforced shed with underground tanks, solar panels, and an emergency radio. No permanent staff. We'd set it up the previous summer as a midpoint station, somewhere to refuel during longer runs to the coast. The depot needed restocking. That was my job today. Load up the snowcat with fuel drums, make the run, pump them into the underground tanks, and come home. 4 hours, maybe 5. Easy. I suited up in the equipment room. thermal underlayer, insulated overalls, boots rated to 70 below, heavy parka with a fur-lined hood, gloves, goggles, balaclava. By the time I was dressed, I looked like an astronaut. Felt like one too, moving in all those layers. Elise was already in the communications room when I stopped by. She had 3 monitors running, satellite feeds and tracking displays glowing in the darkness. She looked up as I entered, her face lit by blue screen light. "Fuel run?" she asked. "Depot 7 should be back by noon." She pulled up the GPS tracker that was hardwired into the snowcat. A green dot appeared on her screen, sitting right on top of Station Arcturus. That was me, or would be once I started the engine. "Looks clear," she said, checking the weather satellite. "No systems moving in. You're good to go." "Radio check at the depot?" "Standard procedure. Give me a call when you arrive." I nodded and headed for the vehicle bay. The snowcat was already loaded, 8 50-gallon drums of diesel fuel strapped down in the cargo bed. I did a walk-around inspection, checking the tracks, the fuel lines, the emergency equipment. Everything looked good. The engine started with a deep, rumbling growl. I let it warm up for 5 minutes, watching the gauges climb to operating temperature. The heater kicked in, pushing warm air into the cab. Outside, the darkness was absolute. No stars, no moon, just the snowcat's headlights cutting a tunnel through the black. I radioed Elise. "Arcturus, this is Mercer, departing now." "Copy that, Mercer. I have you on GPS. Drive safe." I put the snowcat in gear and rolled out of the vehicle bay. The tracks bit into the snow, and we lurched forward into the night. The first hour was unremarkable. I followed the GPS route northeast, the snowcat grinding along at a steady 12 miles per hour. The headlights showed nothing but white snow and darkness. No landmarks, no features, just an endless expanse of frozen nothing. That's the thing about the Arctic. There's no reference points, no trees, no buildings, no hills, just flat, white, stretching to infinity. If your GPS fails, you're dead. You could drive in circles until you ran out of fuel and never know it. I kept my eyes on the instruments. GPS coordinates updating in real time. Heading 045 degrees, speed 12.3 miles per hour. Fuel 3/4 full. Everything normal. The radio crackled. Elise's voice slightly distorted by distance. "Mercer, this is Arcturus. How's it going out there?" "Smooth, no issues, about 15 miles out from the depot." "Copy that. I have you on track. The satellite's showing some atmospheric interference, but nothing major. Just keep an eye on it." "Will do." Atmospheric interference. That usually meant aurora borealis activity. The northern lights could be beautiful, but they also played hell with radio communications. Something about charged particles and magnetic fields. I didn't understand the science. I just knew that sometimes the radio would fill with static and the GPS would get jumpy. I glanced up through the windshield. The sky was dark, but there was a faint glow on the horizon. Green and purple, flickering like distant lightning. Aurora. They were far away. No problem. Just pretty lights in an ugly place. The GPS chimed. Depot 7, 2 miles ahead. I slowed down, scanning for the depot's location beacon. It should be visible by now, a small flashing light on a pole. There, a red blink in the darkness. I adjusted course slightly and headed straight for it. The depot appeared in my headlights. A small metal shed, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, with solar panels on the roof and a radio antenna. The underground fuel tanks were marked by access hatches in the snow. Everything looked intact, undisturbed. I pulled up next to the shed and killed the engine. The sudden silence was profound. No engine noise, no wind, nothing. Just me and my breathing inside my hood. I radioed Elise. "Arcturus, this is Mercer. I'm at Depot 7, beginning fuel transfer." Static. "Arcturus, do you copy?" More static. Then her voice, faint and choppy. "Mercer, copy, interference, check in, 15. The signal was breaking up. Probably the aurora. I tried again. "Elise, I'm losing you. I'll call when the transfer's complete." No response. Just static. I shut off the radio and climbed out of the cab. The cold hit me like a wall. Even through all my layers I could feel it. The air was so cold it burned going into my lungs. My breath crystallized instantly, falling as ice crystals. I got to work, opening the fuel drums, connecting the hand pump, feeding diesel into the underground tanks. It was physical work, and I was grateful for it. The movement kept me warm, kept me focused. I'd pumped maybe 3 drums when I felt it. That sensation. The one you get when someone's watching you. The hair on the back of your neck standing up. That primitive warning system your hindbrain uses to tell you something's wrong. I stopped pumping and looked around. Nothing. Just darkness and snow. The depot shed behind me. The snowcat's shape in the dim light. Empty tundra in every direction. But the feeling didn't go away. I scanned the horizon slowly, turning in a full circle. My headlamp beam swept across the white landscape. Nothing, nobody. Then I saw it, a light, not on the ground, in the sky. But not aurora. This was different. A single point of light, completely motionless, about 30 degrees above the horizon to the east. Bright white, like a star, but bigger, much bigger. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. It didn't move, didn't flicker, just hung there, impossibly bright against the darkness. A satellite, I thought, or maybe a plane flying toward me. Except satellites move, planes move. This thing was perfectly still. I looked away, shook my head, looked back. Still there. I felt a creeping unease. Something about that light was wrong. The way it hung there, the intensity, the absolute stillness. It felt deliberate. Like it was there for a reason. Like it was watching. I quickly finished pumping the fuel, my movements fast and clumsy. Disconnected the hose, sealed the underground tanks, loaded the empty drums back into the snowcat. The whole time I kept glancing at that light. It never moved, never changed. I climbed back into the cab and started the engine. The familiar rumble was comforting. I grabbed the radio. "Arcturus, this is Mercer. Fuel transfer complete. I'm heading back now." Static, heavy, crackling static. "Elise, do you copy?" Nothing. The radio was completely dead. Not even carrier wave. Just that thick, oppressive static that filled the cab with white noise. I switched it off. Fine. I'd check in when I got closer to the station. Radios failed sometimes. It happened. I put the snowcat in gear and headed southwest, back toward Arcturus. The GPS showed the route clearly. 30 miles, straight line. At 12 miles per hour, I'd be home in 2.5 hours. But I couldn't stop looking at that light. It was behind me now, somewhere over my right shoulder. I kept checking the side mirror, and every time I looked, it was still there. Still motionless. Still bright. About 5 miles from the depot, something changed. The light moved, not across the sky, closer. It was descending, dropping down toward the horizon. Slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice at first, but it was definitely getting lower and brighter. My heart started pounding. I pressed down on the accelerator, pushing the snowcat as fast as it would go. 15 miles per hour. 16. The engine strained, the tracks throwing up rooster tails of snow behind us. The light kept descending. It was almost at ground level now, maybe a mile behind me. And it was huge. Not a point anymore, but a disk. A massive disk of white light hovering just above the snow. I couldn't look away. My eyes kept flicking to the side mirror, watching that thing. It wasn't following me exactly, just there, present, existing. Then the snowcat's engine sputtered. My blood went cold. The engine coughed, running rough, the RPMs dropping. I checked the gauges. Fuel was fine, temperature fine, oil pressure fine. But the engine was losing power. No, I muttered. Don't you dare. The engine sputtered again. The snowcat slowed. 12 miles per hour. 10, 8. I looked in the mirror. The light was closer. Much closer. Maybe a quarter mile behind me. And I could see something now. Not just light, but structure. Shapes. Geometric patterns in the brightness. Like looking at a building through frosted glass. You couldn't make out details, but you knew something solid was there. The engine died. The snowcat coasted to a stop in the middle of nowhere. The headlights stayed on, running on battery power, but the engine was completely dead. No sound, no vibration, nothing. I sat there in the sudden silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. My breath was coming fast, fogging the inside of my goggles. The heater was off now, and I could already feel the cold seeping into the cab. In the mirror, the light had stopped too. It was hovering about 200 yards behind me. Not moving, just waiting. I tried the ignition. The starter motor clicked but didn't engage. Tried again. Same result. The engine was completely dead. Okay, I said out loud. Okay, think. I had emergency supplies, flares, a radio beacon, cold weather survival gear. If I activated the beacon, help would come. Eventually. But that might be hours. And with the heater off, the cab temperature would drop fast. I had maybe 4 hours before hypothermia became a serious risk. I reached for the emergency beacon. That's when the light moved again. It surged forward, impossibly fast. One moment, it was 200 yards away. The next moment, it was right there, hovering directly above the snowcat. The cab filled with white light. So bright it hurt. I threw up my hands, shielding my eyes, but the light penetrated everything. Through my gloves, through my eyelids. Pure, searing white. And then I felt it. A pulling sensation, like gravity had reversed. Like something was lifting me up, not physically. I was still in my seat, still strapped in. But something was pulling at me. At my insides, at my thoughts. The last thing I remember clearly is the instrument panel going dark. Every gauge, every light. Everything shutting off at once. Then, nothing. Not blackness, not unconsciousness, just nothing. Like those 45 minutes never existed. The engine was running. That was the first thing I noticed. The familiar rumble, the vibration through the seat. The heater blowing warm air into the cab. I blinked, disoriented. My hands were on the steering wheel. The GPS showed I was moving, heading southwest at 12 miles per hour. Everything looked normal, except I couldn't remember starting the engine. I shook my head, trying to clear it. Must have dozed off for a second. Long hours. The darkness, the monotony. It happens sometimes. You zone out, your brain goes on autopilot, and you lose a few seconds. But this felt different. This felt like waking up. Like I'd been somewhere else and suddenly snapped back to reality. I checked the instruments. Fuel gauge read just under half. That seemed wrong. I'd filled up at Arcturus, used maybe a quarter tank getting to Depot 7. Even with the return trip, I should have more fuel than this. The GPS showed I was 15 miles from Arcturus, close to home. That meant I'd covered 15 miles since leaving the depot, but I couldn't remember any of it. Couldn't remember the last. I checked the dashboard clock, the last 45 minutes. 45 minutes, gone. I grabbed the radio. My hands were shaking. Arcturus, this is Mercer. Do you copy? Static. Then, Mercer, this is Arcturus. I copy. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for the past hour. Elise's voice. Clear and sharp. She sounded worried, maybe even angry. I'm 15 miles out, en route back. What do you mean, where have I been? You stopped moving, on GPS. You stopped at Depot 7 and just sat there. For 45 minutes. I tried radioing. You didn't respond. I was about to send out a search team. I looked at the odometer. It showed I'd traveled 62 miles since leaving Arcturus. That was about right. 30 miles to the depot, 30 back, plus a couple miles for maneuvering. But the GPS said I'd been stationary for 45 minutes. Elise, I'm looking at my odometer. It says I've traveled 62 miles. I'm not at the depot. I'm 15 miles from home. Silence. Then, Jonah, your GPS position hasn't changed. You're still showing at Depot 7. You've been at that exact location for the past 45 minutes. That's not possible. I can see the GPS right here in front of me. It shows I'm moving. What I'm seeing says different. Hold on, let me refresh the satellite feed. I waited, my heart pounding. The snowcat continued its steady grind southwest. The headlights showed nothing but snow and darkness. Normal. Everything looked completely normal. Okay, Elise said slowly. That's weird. I just refreshed, and now you're showing at your correct position. But the log still shows you stationary at the depot for 45 minutes. Like you just teleported 15 miles southwest. I didn't teleport. I drove. I've been driving this whole time. Then why does the satellite say you weren't? I didn't have an answer. Did anything happen at the depot? She asked. Anything unusual? I thought about the light, the thing in the sky, the way the engine died, the impossible brightness, the sensation of being pulled. No, I heard myself say. Nothing unusual, just radio interference. Aurora, maybe. Why did I lie? I still ask myself that. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it real. Maybe because I was scared Elise would think I was crazy. Or maybe because some part of me, deep down, knew that what happened couldn't be explained and shouldn't be shared. The aurora was pretty active, Elise said. I saw some strange readings on the satellite. Atmospheric anomalies. Could have screwed with the GPS. Yeah, probably that. Well, you're showing up fine now. Just get home safe. I'll have coffee ready. Copy that. Mercer out. I drove the rest of the way in silence. My mind was racing, trying to fill in the gaps, trying to remember those 45 minutes. But there was nothing. Just that moment when the light consumed everything, and then waking up with the engine running. I thought about pulling over, stopping to examine the snowcat. Look for evidence. But evidence of what? That I'd lost time? That something impossible had happened? The logical part of my brain tried to explain it away. Microsleep. Hallucination. Equipment malfunction. But the odometer didn't lie. I'd traveled 32 miles. The GPS said I'd been stationary. Both things couldn't be true, unless the impossible was true. Arcturus appeared in my headlights about 20 minutes later. The cluster of illuminated modules looked like heaven. Safety. Warmth. Normal human reality. I'd never been so grateful to see it. I pulled into the vehicle bay and shut down the engine. For a long moment I just sat there, breathing. My hands were still shaking. My head felt fuzzy, like I'd been drugged. I climbed out of the cab and did a walk-around inspection. The snowcat looked fine. No damage, no scorch marks. The tracks showed normal wear. Everything was as it should be, except for the odometer. 62.3 miles. Proof that I'd driven through those 45 minutes, even if I couldn't remember them. Elise was waiting for me in the communications room. She had 2 mugs of coffee ready, just like she'd promised. I took one gratefully, warming my hands on the ceramic. "You okay?" she asked. "You look like hell." "Long drive, I'm just tired." She pulled up the GPS logs on her monitor. "Look at this. Here's your departure from Arcturus at 0645. You reach Depot 7 at 0925. Normal travel time, then nothing. You're stationary until 10:10. Then suddenly, you reappear 15 miles southwest, like you skipped the entire return trip." I stared at the screen. The green dot sat motionless at Depot 7's coordinates for 45 minutes. Then it jumped, instantly, to a position on the route back to Arcturus. "Satellite glitch?" I suggested. "Maybe, but we've never seen anything like this before. Usually when GPS fails, you just lose signal. You don't show up in 2 different places." "What about the odometer? What about it?" "It says I drove 62 miles. If I was really stationary for 45 minutes, where did those extra 32 miles come from?" She frowned. "You're saying you drove 32 miles while the GPS showed you stationary?" "I'm saying something doesn't add up." Elise pulled up another screen. "I logged some weird atmospheric readings during that time period, right around when you stopped moving. Look at this." She showed me a satellite image. The black and white display showed the terrain around Depot 7, and directly above the depot, centered on those exact coordinates, was a bright spot, a circular area of intense light, maybe a quarter-mile across. "What is that?" I asked. "I don't know. It appeared at 0925, right when you reached the depot. Stayed there for 45 minutes, then disappeared at 10:10, the same moment you reappeared on GPS 15 miles away. Could it be Aurora?" "Aurora doesn't look like that. This is localized, stationary, and the intensity is way beyond normal Aurora levels. This is..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "This is something else." We both stared at the image, that circular bloom of light perfectly centered on Depot 7. On me. "Did you see anything?" Elise asked quietly. "When you were out there? Anything strange?" I should have told her. About the light in the sky, the disk, the way the engine died, the pulling sensation, the 45 minutes that vanished. But I didn't. "No," I said. "Just darkness and snow, same as always." She looked at me for a long moment, and I could tell she didn't believe me. But she didn't push it. "I'm going to file this as a satellite malfunction," she said finally. "Equipment error, atmospheric interference. Nothing we can't explain." "Good idea." I finished my coffee and headed to my quarters. I needed sleep, needed to process what had happened, or what I thought had happened. Because the more time passed, the less sure I was about any of it. Maybe it really was just a glitch. Equipment failure. My memory playing tricks. The Arctic could do that to you. Make you see things. Make you doubt reality. But that night lying in my bunk, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that light, that impossible brightness, felt that pulling sensation. And I knew, deep in my bones, that something had happened during those 45 minutes. Something I couldn't remember, but my body remembered. Some encounter that existed in the gaps between what the GPS recorded and what my odometer showed. I got up and went back to the vehicle bay. It was 3 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I used a flashlight to examine the snowcat more carefully, looking for anything I'd missed. The fuel drums were empty, just as they should be. The tracks showed normal wear. The engine looked fine. Everything was exactly as expected, except for one thing. On the roof of the cab, right in the center, there was a mark, a circular discoloration in the paint, maybe 8 inches across. The paint inside the circle looked different, newer, cleaner, like it had been renewed somehow. I touched it. The metal was slightly warm, not hot, but noticeably warmer than the surrounding surface, even though the snowcat had been sitting in the bay for hours, in a space that was barely above freezing. I pulled out my phone and took pictures, close-ups, different angles, evidence of something, even if I didn't know what. Then I climbed back into the cab and examined the instrument panel. Everything looked normal at first, but when I turned on the GPS, I noticed something odd. The trip log showed the complete journey. Departure from Arcturus, arrival at Depot 7. Then, the return trip. But the timestamps were wrong. According to the GPS's internal log, I'd left Depot 7 at 0926, not 1010, and I'd arrived back at Arcturus at 12:15. That was the correct arrival time, which meant, according to the GPS, the return journey had taken 2 hours and 49 minutes. But I'd only been driving for 2 hours and 4 minutes. 45 minutes were missing from the GPS record, hidden in plain sight, or rather added, inserted, like something had stretched time, made 45 minutes feel like hours, or made hours compress into 45 minutes. I sat in the dark cab, staring at those numbers, my mind spinning. The GPS said I'd been stationary at Depot 7, but also said I'd left at 0926. The odometer said I'd driven 62 miles. The satellite showed me disappearing for 45 minutes, and there was a warm mark on the roof that shouldn't exist. Nothing fit, nothing made sense, unless I accepted the impossible. I thought about that light, that disk, the way it had descended, the way the engine had died, the absolute brightness that consumed everything. What if I hadn't stayed at Depot 7? What if I'd been somewhere else during those 45 minutes? Somewhere the GPS couldn't track, somewhere outside normal space and time. What if I'd been taken? The thought made my skin crawl, but it fit. It explained everything. The missing time, the discrepancy between GPS and odometer, the atmospheric anomaly, the mark on the roof. I'd read about this, stories, reports, people who experienced missing time, who saw strange lights, who woke up somewhere else with no memory of how they got there. I'd always dismissed those stories as fantasy, delusion, attention-seeking, but now it had happened to me. I spent the next 3 days trying to act normal, doing my job, making supply runs, pretending everything was fine. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop checking the GPS logs. Couldn't stop touching that warm spot on the snowcat's roof. Elise noticed. Of course she noticed. She was too observant not to. "You want to talk about what really happened?" she asked one morning over coffee. Nothing happened. "Jonah, I've seen the logs. I've analyzed the satellite data. Something happened out there, something neither of us can explain, and you're lying about it." I wanted to tell her, wanted to share the burden. But how do you explain something you don't understand? How do you describe an experience you can't remember? "What do you think it was?" I asked instead. "The light on the satellite image. What do you think caused it?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I don't know. It doesn't match any natural phenomenon I'm aware of. It's too localized, too intense, too deliberate." "Deliberate?" "It appeared right when you reached the depot, stayed there exactly as long as you were unaccounted for, then disappeared. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was tracking you." "And if you did know better?" She looked at me, her eyes serious. then I'd say you encountered something that shouldn't exist. Something that can manipulate GPS signals and satellite imagery. Something that wanted those 45 minutes to go unrecorded. You believe in that stuff? UFOs? Aliens? I believe in data, and the data says something impossible happened. Whether it's aliens or something else, I don't know. But it was real. Why me? I asked. Why that moment? Why Depot 7? Maybe it wasn't random. Maybe that location is significant. Or maybe you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I thought about the light, how it had seemed to wait, how it had descended only after I'd finished the fuel transfer, like it had been watching, waiting for the right moment. I'm going back, I said suddenly. What? To Depot 7. I need to see it again. In daylight. I need to know if there's any evidence. Jonah, that's a bad idea. Probably, but I have to know. She studied me. If you're going back, I'm coming with you. You hate field work, and you hate mysteries. We're both doing things we hate. She stood up. Give me an hour to prep equipment. We'll take readings, document everything. If something's out there, we'll find it. We left Arcturus at dawn. Well, not dawn exactly. In the Arctic winter, dawn is just a slightly lighter shade of darkness. The sun wouldn't actually rise for another 3 weeks, but around 10 a.m. the sky lightened from black to deep blue, giving us maybe 3 hours of usable twilight. Elise brought everything: radiation detector, electromagnetic field meter, high-resolution camera, spectrometer. She sat in the passenger seat of the snowcat, surrounded by equipment, looking like a paranormal investigator. If we find anything anomalous, we document it, she said. Photos, measurements, evidence, no matter what it is. And if we don't find anything, then we accept that whatever happened might not leave traces, but at least we'll know we tried. The drive to Depot 7 took 2.5 hours. I kept checking the GPS, watching the green dot crawl across the screen, watching to see if it would freeze again, if that light would return. But the journey was uneventful, just snow and darkness and the rumble of the engine. Normal. Boring. Exactly how it should be. We reached the depot at 12:47 hours. I parked in the exact same spot as before, next to the fuel shed. The red location beacon blinked on its pole. Everything looked normal. Elise immediately started taking readings. She walked in widening circles around the depot, scanning with the EMF meter, checking for radiation, photographing everything. I examined the shed itself. The door was locked, just as it should be. The solar panels were clean. The underground fuel hatches were sealed. No signs of disturbance. Getting some weird readings, Elise called out. She was about 30 yards north of the depot, staring at her meter. Background radiation is slightly elevated, not dangerous, but higher than normal. I joined her. How much higher? About 15%. Could be natural. Could be from the fuel, or she trailed off. Or what? Or something else was here. Something that left residual radiation. We spent an hour documenting everything. Elise took soil samples, air samples, photographed the snow patterns. I measured distances, checked for any unusual marks or disturbances, and then I saw them. Tracks. Not snowcat tracks. Not human. Something else. Depressions in the snow, similar to what I remembered from the night it happened. Circular. About 3 feet across. Spaced about 8 feet apart. Leading from the north and circling the depot 3 times before heading back north and disappearing. Elise, she came over, saw the tracks, and immediately started photographing them. Up close, they were even stranger. The snow inside each depression was smooth, not compressed. Not melted, just smooth, like it had been polished. "These aren't natural," she said, kneeling to examine one closely, "and they're recent, probably within the last week." "Last few days," I said. "They weren't here when I came before." She looked up at me. "How do you know? It was dark, you had a lot on your mind." "I know." She took temperature readings inside the depressions. "They're warm, 5 degrees warmer than the surrounding snow. No heat source visible, no radiation spike, they're just warm." We followed the tracks north. They continued for about a quarter mile, maintaining that perfect spacing, that perfect circular shape. Then they just stopped. No final impression, no disturbance. They just ended in the middle of nowhere, like whatever made them had lifted off the ground and disappeared. "Okay," Elise said slowly. "This is officially beyond my experience. These tracks are physically impossible. Nothing natural makes marks like this. Nothing mechanical either. So, what made them?" "I think you know, Jonah. I think you've known since it happened." I looked at her. "You think it was a UFO?" "I think something came down here. Something that left tracks and radiation and atmospheric anomalies. Something that took 45 minutes of your life. Whether it's extraterrestrial or interdimensional or some classified military technology, I don't know. But it wasn't natural." Elise continued taking measurements at the point where the tracks ended. "The EMF readings are spiking here. Whatever made these tracks, this is where it left. Or where it transitioned. Transitioned to what? I don't know. But look at this." She showed me the EMF meter. The needle was jumping erratically. "This pattern, it's not random. There's a rhythm to it, almost like a signal." I watched the needle pulse. She was right. There was a pattern. 3 short spikes, 2 long ones, then a pause, repeating. "Can you record that?" "Already am." She pulled out a tablet and connected it to the meter. "If this is a signal, maybe we can analyze it later. See if there's meaning." We spent another hour at the site, documenting everything we could find. Elise collected more soil samples from inside the circular depressions. I measured the exact spacing between each track, noting that it was consistent to within an inch. Too precise to be natural, too perfect to be accidental. As we worked, the sky began to darken, not from nightfall but from clouds moving in. The temperature was dropping too. A storm was coming. "We should head back," Elise said, checking the weather display on her tablet. "There's a front moving in. If we don't leave now, we could get stuck here." I took one last look at the tracks, at the place where they ended. What if it comes back while we're here? You want it to come back? Part of me does. Part of me wants answers, wants to remember what happened. And the other part is terrified. We packed up the equipment and headed back to the snowcat. As I started the engine, I noticed something on the dashboard. A small piece of paper folded neatly, sitting right on top of the GPS display. I hadn't put it there. Neither had Elise. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. The paper was clean, crisp, new, not weathered or damp, as if someone had just placed it there moments ago. I unfolded it. Inside was a drawing, simple. A circle with lines radiating from it, like a sun, or like something else. Underneath the drawing were numbers, coordinates. "Elise," I said quietly, "look at this." She leaned over, saw the paper, and went very still. "Where did that come from?" "It was just here, on the dashboard." "That's impossible. We locked the snowcat. Nobody else is out here." "I know." She took the paper carefully, holding it by the edges. "These coordinates, let me check them." She pulled out her tablet, typed in the numbers. A location appeared on the map, about 60 miles northwest of our current position, in the middle of absolute nowhere. No stations, no depots, no landmarks, just empty tundra. "What's there?" I asked. "According to this, nothing. It's not even on regular patrol routes, just empty Arctic." "Then why leave us coordinates? Maybe it's an invitation, or a test, or..." She trailed off. "Or what? Or maybe it's where you were during those 45 minutes. Maybe it's showing us where you went." The thought made my skin crawl. "We can't go there, not now. Not with a storm coming." "I know, but we have the coordinates. We can come back, if we want to." I looked at the paper again. The simple drawing, the precise numbers. Left for us to find, by something that could enter a locked vehicle without leaving any sign. "It knows we're investigating," I said. "It knows we came back, and it's responding." "That's both encouraging and terrifying," Elise said. We drove back to Arcturus in silence, both of us processing what we'd found. The tracks, the radiation, the EMF signal, and now, impossibly, a message. The storm hit halfway back, reducing visibility to almost zero. I had to slow to 5 miles per hour, navigating by GPS alone. The snow came down in sheets, and the wind rocked the snowcat like it was a toy. And then, through the storm, I saw something. A light, off to the right, moving parallel to us, keeping pace. "Elise, do you see that?" She looked up from her tablet. "See what?" "That light, 3 o'clock, about 100 yards out." She peered through the window, squinting into the snow. "I don't... Wait, yes, I see it." The light was soft, amber-colored, moving smoothly through the storm as if the wind and snow didn't affect it. It maintained a constant distance from us, not approaching, not receding, just there. "Should we stop?" Elise asked. "In this storm, that would be suicide. But if it's trying to communicate, or lead us away from safety, we keep going, straight to Arcturus." The light followed us for another 20 minutes. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. One moment it was there, the next gone, as if it had simply winked out of existence. We reached Arcturus 90 minutes later, both of us exhausted and shaken. The storm raged outside as we unloaded the equipment and samples. Over the next few days, Elise analyzed everything we'd collected. The soil samples showed trace elements that shouldn't exist in Arctic soil. Silicon compounds that were too pure, too refined, like they'd been manufactured rather than natural. The EMF signal recording was even stranger. When she ran it through analysis software, it showed a structure. Patterns within patterns. Mathematical relationships. It wasn't random electromagnetic noise. It was organized, intentional. "This is language," she said, showing me the analysis. "Or something like language, information encoded in electromagnetic pulses. Can you translate it?" "That's beyond my capability. This would take specialists, cryptographers, maybe even AI assistants. But the fact that it has structure means it's communication. Something was trying to tell us something. Or trying to tell me something. During those 45 minutes. She nodded slowly. "That's possible. Maybe the signal isn't just from the landing site. Maybe it's from you. From whatever they did during the abduction." The thought was disturbing. "You think they put something in me? Some kind of message?" "I don't know. But that would explain why you feel drawn to this. Why you can't let it go. Maybe you're carrying information you can't consciously access." I thought about that, about those fragments of memory that weren't quite memories, those sensations of being somewhere vast and bright. Were they real? Or were they something else, something planted? "There's something else," Elise said. She pulled up the satellite imagery again. "I've been reviewing the data from that day, frame by frame. Look at this." She showed me a sequence of images, the bright, circular anomaly over Depot 7. But in one frame there was something else, a smaller light, moving away from the main anomaly, heading southwest. "That appeared at 0927, she said. 1 minute after you reached the depot. It moved southwest at incredible speed, then disappeared from satellite coverage about 15 miles away. 15 miles southwest of the depot," I said slowly. "That's where I reappeared on GPS." "Exactly. What if you didn't stay at the depot? What if this smaller light was you? Or the snowcat? What if you were transported 15 miles while the main object remained stationary? But I was driving. The odometer shows I drove those miles." "Did you? Or does the odometer just show distance traveled? What if you were moved instantaneously, but the snowcat systems recorded it as if you'd driven normally?" My head was spinning. That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. But it fits the data. You were at the depot, then you were somewhere else. The satellite saw something move between those points, and your GPS showed you stationary the whole time. So, which is real, the GPS or the odometer? Maybe both. Maybe you existed in two states simultaneously, present and not present, here and there. Quantum uncertainty applied to human scale. I sat down heavily. I can't process this. Neither can I, but I'm documenting it all. Every anomaly, every impossibility, because someone needs to. That night I dreamed. Not the usual fragments, not vague impressions. A clear, vivid dream. I was back in the snowcat, but I wasn't alone. There was someone in the passenger seat, or something. I couldn't look directly at it. My eyes kept sliding away. But I knew it was there. It was showing me something. The dashboard display had changed. Instead of GPS coordinates, it showed the universe. Stars and galaxies and vast stretches of emptiness. And paths between them. Routes, like the supply routes I drove, but cosmic in scale. "You map the small," a voice said. Not sound, just words in my mind. "We map the large, same purpose, different scale." "What are you?" I asked in the dream. "Travelers, like you. We cross distances you cannot measure. But we recognize the pattern, the need to move, to transport, to connect." "Why me?" "Random intersection. You were there, we were there, curiosity on both sides. The 45 minutes, what happened? We shared space, different dimensions of the same location. You could not perceive us correctly, we could not perceive you correctly, but we tried to understand. Did you hurt me? No, we preserved you, returned you unchanged, but understanding leaves traces, memory in the cells even when the mind forgets." I woke up gasping. My heart was pounding. The dream had felt so real, more real than real. Was it just a dream? Or was it something else? A recovered memory? A message? I wrote it all down immediately, every detail, every word. Then I showed it to Elise. She read it silently, her expression unreadable. Then, "This matches some of the signal patterns, these concepts, different dimensions, shared space. It's similar to the mathematical structures I found in the EMF recording." So it wasn't just a dream. Maybe not. Maybe your subconscious is processing information you received during the encounter, information you couldn't understand consciously, but your brain is trying to translate into something comprehensible. "Travelers," I said. That's what it called them. Not aliens, not invaders, travelers. Like you, supply drivers across the cosmic tundra. The thought was oddly comforting. Not monsters, not incomprehensible others, just travelers, doing their job, crossing distances, making routes through the dark. We stood in the Arctic twilight surrounded by impossible tracks, and I finally admitted what I'd been avoiding. "I saw it," I said. "A light in the sky, a disk. It descended. The engine died. The light consumed everything. And then, nothing. I woke up 15 miles away with no memory. Why didn't you tell me? Because saying it makes it real. Because I thought maybe I'd hallucinated. But these tracks, they're real, which means it was real." Elise was quiet for a moment. Then, "We need to report this." "Report what? That we found warm spots in the snow? That I saw a light? They'll never believe us." "We have evidence. Photos, measurements, radiation readings. That's more than most people ever get. And they'll say it's equipment error, natural phenomena, anything except the truth." She looked at me. "What is the truth, Jonah? What do you think happened to you?" I thought about those 45 minutes, the missing time, the odometer showing 32 extra miles, the mark on the snowcat's roof. "I think I was taken," I said quietly. "Taken somewhere. Examined, maybe. Then returned. With my memory wiped, but my body remembering the journey. That's a terrifying thought." "Yeah. But also incredible. If it's true, if you had contact with something non-human, that's the most significant event in human history. Or it's the most significant thing that'll never be believed." We collected our samples and measurements, documented everything. Then we returned to the snowcat. As I started the engine, I looked at the spot where it had happened, where that light had descended, where I'd lost 45 minutes of my life. "Do you think it'll come back?" Elise asked. "I don't know, maybe." "Are you scared?" I thought about that. Yeah, but also curious. Because whatever it was, it didn't hurt me. It took me somewhere and brought me back. Why? Maybe it was studying us, like we study animals, catch and release. Or maybe it was trying to communicate, and we just don't have the capacity to understand. The drive back to Arcturus was quiet. Both of us lost in thought, processing what we'd found, what it meant. Back at the station, Elise spent hours analyzing the data, the radiation readings, the photographs, the GPS logs. She compiled everything into a comprehensive report, documenting the anomalies without drawing conclusions. "I'm sending this to headquarters," she said. "They need to know what's happening out here. What if they shut down the depot, pull us out? Then maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe this area is too dangerous." The response came 3 days later, a brief email from the operations director. "Report received, anomalies noted, continue standard monitoring, no changes to depot operations at this time." That was it. No investigation, no follow-up, no acknowledgement that anything unusual had occurred. Just a bureaucratic shrug. "They don't care," I said. "Or they already know," Elise replied, "and they're not surprised. You think this has happened before? I think the Arctic is vast, remote. If something wanted to operate here without being noticed, it could. And I think maybe it has been, for a long time." Over the next month, I made 4 more supply runs to Depot 7. Each time, I watched for that light. Waited for the engine to die, expected to lose time again. But nothing happened. The runs were normal, boring, the way they should be. The tracks disappeared after the first heavy snowfall. The radiation levels returned to normal. The atmospheric anomalies ceased. It was as if whatever had been there had moved on. But I couldn't move on. Every night, lying in my bunk, I thought about those 45 minutes. tried to remember, tried to fill in the gaps, and sometimes in that space between waking and sleeping, I caught fragments, impressions, not memories exactly, but feelings. The sensation of movement without moving, of seeing without eyes, of being somewhere vast and cold and impossibly bright. Were they real memories? Or just my brain trying to fill in the blanks? I'll never know. 3 months after the incident, my rotation at Arcturus ended. I flew back to Anchorage, returned to normal life, got a job driving trucks. Nothing exotic, nothing dangerous, just regular routes on regular roads where GPS always worked and time always made sense. But I couldn't forget. I reached out to others. People who'd worked Arctic stations, drivers, technicians, scientists, quietly asking if they'd ever experienced anything unusual. Missing time, strange lights, equipment failures. Most said no, but a few hesitated, looked uncomfortable, changed the subject. One retired seismologist told me, over coffee in a Fairbanks diner, that he'd seen lights 3 times during his 12 years working northern stations, lights that moved in ways nothing human-made could move, lights that appeared and disappeared without explanation. I reported it once, he said. Put it in my official logs. Know what happened. They classified it. Redacted it from the records. Told me it was probably aurora or aircraft lights. But I know what I saw, and it wasn't aurora. Why do they cover it up? I asked. Because admitting it's real would mean admitting we're not alone. And we're not in control. People don't want to know that. Governments don't want to acknowledge it. So they bury it. Classify it. Make sure stories like yours never see daylight. But it's still happening. It's always been happening. The Arctic, Antarctica, remote places where few people go. They've been coming here for who knows how long. Watching us, studying us, maybe trying to understand us. Have you ever had missing time? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, once. 4 hours. I was checking a remote sensor array. Next thing I knew, I was back at the station with no memory of the return trip. My supervisor said I must have fallen asleep. Equipment malfunction, but I knew. My body knew. Something had happened. I showed him the photos of the tracks, the radiation readings, the GPS anomalies. He studied them carefully. This is good documentation, better than most ever get. You should preserve this. Make copies, because someone might try to make it disappear. Like they did with your report. Exactly. I thanked him and left. That night, I backed up all the data to 3 different hard drives. Sent copies to secure cloud storage. Created a written account of everything that happened. This account, because even if no one believes it, even if it gets buried and forgotten, at least there will be a record. Evidence that on one cold night in the Arctic, something impossible happened. That Jonah Mercer lost 45 minutes to something beyond understanding. That there are things in the darkness that we don't control and can't explain. Elise left the Arctic too. She's working at a weather station in Colorado now. We talk sometimes. Encrypted messages, careful words. But we both know what we experienced. We both carry it with us. She told me last month that she'd found references to similar incidents. 23 documented cases over the past 40 years. All in remote Arctic locations. All involving missing time, equipment failures, and unexplained atmospheric phenomena. All officially classified as equipment malfunctions or operator error. They're hiding it, she said. Systematically. Every incident gets the same treatment, documented, classified, buried. Why? Because the truth is too big, too destabilizing. If people knew that there are things out there, things that can take us and return us and manipulate our technology, it would change everything. Every assumption about our place in the universe would need to be reconsidered. Maybe that needs to happen. Maybe, but not yet. The world isn't ready. I think about that sometimes. About readiness. About what it means to know the truth versus living in comfortable ignorance. Is it better to know that we're not alone, even if that knowledge is terrifying? Or is it better to believe we're the apex, the peak of evolution, masters of our domain? I don't have an answer. All I have is my story. Those 45 minutes, the tracks in the snow, the warm spot on the snowcat's roof that eventually faded but never completely disappeared, and the certainty that whatever took me is still out there, still watching, still waiting. Maybe it'll happen again. Maybe to me. Maybe to someone else. Another supply driver on another dark night in the Arctic. Another person who'll lose time and wake up somewhere else with no memory, but the feeling that something profound occurred. And maybe, one day, we'll be ready to face the truth. Ready to accept that the universe is stranger than we imagine. That there are things in the darkness that exist outside our understanding. Until then, I keep driving. Keep watching the skies. Keep wondering. Because those 45 minutes changed me. Made me see the world differently. Made me understand that certainty is an illusion. That the known world is smaller than we think. That the Arctic darkness holds secrets we're only beginning to glimpse. I went back to Depot 7 one last time. Not for work, just to see it. To stand in that spot where it happened. Where I lost time and gained a mystery. The tracks were long gone, the radiation normal. No signs that anything unusual had ever occurred there. But I could feel it. That presence, that awareness. Like something was still watching, still waiting. I stood in the cold and the darkness, and I spoke out loud to the empty air. I know you're real. I don't understand you. Don't know what you want or where you're from. But I know you're out there, and I'm ready. If you want to take me again, to show me what I can't remember, I'm ready. The wind picked up. Snow swirled around me. The Arctic night pressed close. And for just a moment, I thought I saw it. A flicker of light on the horizon. There and gone. A reminder. An acknowledgement. Or maybe just my imagination. Seeing what I wanted to see. I drove back to Arcturus for the last time. Left the Arctic behind. Returned to normal life. But I'm still watching the skies. Still wondering about those 45 minutes. Still carrying the knowledge that the impossible is real. And I'm still waiting, because I know it'll happen again. Maybe not to me, but to someone. Another lost 45 minutes. Another impossible journey. Another person who'll wake up with questions and no answers. And when it does, I hope they'll find this account. Read these words, know that they're not alone. That they're not crazy. That the universe is vast and strange and full of mysteries we're only beginning to understand. The snowcat route might be lost. The time might be missing. The memories might be gone. But the truth remains. Something is out there, and it knows we're here. The storm came from nowhere. That's what I remember most clearly. One moment the Arctic night was calm, the usual darkness punctuated by the green shimmer of aurora borealis. The next moment, wind was screaming across the tundra at 70 miles per hour, and snow was falling so thick you couldn't see 3 feet in front of your face. I'm Mila Hargrove. I've been working Arctic weather stations for 4 years now. 4 years of monitoring atmospheric conditions, recording data, and watching the sky do impossible things. But what happened that night in Station Echo 12 changed everything I thought I understood about the Arctic. Or maybe about reality itself. Harvey Nolan and I were the only staff at Echo 12 that winter. The station was small, just 4 interconnected modules sitting on steel pylons driven into the permafrost. We had instruments on the roof, sensors scattered across the surrounding tundra, and windows, large triple-paned windows facing all directions, designed to let us observe the sky. Those windows were supposed to show us weather patterns. Aurora, cloud formations. They showed us something else. Harvey was ex-Navy, spent 20 years on submarines before retiring to the Arctic. He said he liked the isolation, said it reminded him of being underwater, cut off from the world, existing in a bubble of controlled environment surrounded by hostile nothing. He was a quiet man, methodical. The kind of person you wanted in a crisis because he never panicked, never rushed, just assessed and acted. That steadiness saved us. Or maybe it didn't. I'm still not sure if we were saved or if we just survived something that was never trying to harm us in the first place. The night it happened was January 14th. The sun had set back in November and wouldn't rise again until February. We lived in perpetual darkness, marking time by the clock rather than the sky. Our circadian rhythms were a mess. We slept when we were tired, worked when we were awake. Time became fluid in the endless night. I was on observation duty that evening, sitting in the monitoring room, watching the instruments record wind speed, temperature, barometric pressure. Everything normal, everything routine. Harvey was in the kitchen making coffee. I could hear him moving around, the familiar sounds of cups and spoons and the coffee maker gurgling. Ordinary sounds, comforting sounds. Then the wind hit. It wasn't gradual, there was no build-up. One moment, calm. The next, the station was shaking like someone had grabbed it and started rattling. The wind howled, a sound like nothing human, like the Arctic itself was screaming. Harvey appeared in the doorway, coffee forgotten. That came out of nowhere. I know, the instruments didn't show anything. No pressure change, no warning. We moved to the observation window. The view outside was complete whiteout. Snow so thick it looked like static on a television screen. The wind was driving it horizontally, parallel to the ground. Visibility 0. I've never seen a storm develop that fast, Harvey said. Neither have I. We watched for maybe 10 minutes. The storm showed no signs of letting up. If anything, it was getting worse. The wind speed indicator on the wall was reading 85 miles per hour, gusting to 95. Good thing we're not going anywhere tonight, Harvey muttered. That's when I saw it. Through the whiteout, through the driving snow, a light, not reflected, not aurora, something else. Harvey, do you see that? See what? Light, straight ahead, maybe 100 yards out. He squinted into the storm. I don't... Wait, yeah, I see it. The light was faint at first, just a glow in the whiteness. But it was getting brighter, or closer, hard to tell through the snow. And it was the wrong color. Aurora borealis is green. Sometimes purple or red, but mostly green. This light was blue, deep electric blue, the color of a welding arc, the color of something burning impossibly hot. That's not aurora, Harvey said quietly. No. The light continued to brighten. It wasn't moving horizontally, it was vertical. A column of blue light perfectly straight extending from the ground up into the sky, or from the sky down to the ground. Direction was impossible to determine, and it was directly ahead of the station, maybe 75 yards out, close enough that we could see it clearly despite the storm. We should document this, I said, reaching for the camera. The moment my hand touched the camera, every instrument in the monitoring room went dark. Not off, dark, like someone had sucked all the light out of the LED displays. The screens showed nothing. No readings. No data. Just black. What the hell? Harvey moved to the main control panel, checking connections. We just lost all power to the instruments. The lights are still on, I said. The overhead lights were working fine. The computer monitors glowed normally. Only the scientific instruments had failed. This doesn't make sense. They're on a separate power system, backed up with batteries. They shouldn't all fail at once. I looked back out the window. The blue column of light was brighter now, much brighter, and I could see something I hadn't noticed before. It was pulsing, not rapidly, slowly, one pulse every few seconds. A slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, like my heartbeat. I put my hand to my chest, feeling the pulse there, counted. 1, 2, 3. The light pulsed on 3, my heartbeat. 4, 5, 6. The light pulsed again. It was synchronized. Harvey, I said slowly, count your heartbeat. What? Just do it. Count your pulse. He pressed 2 fingers to his neck, his eyes on the light. I watched his face, saw the moment he realized it. It's matching me. Me too. We stood there, both of us feeling our hearts beat, watching the light pulse in perfect synchronization. Every beat, every pulse, matched. That's not possible, Harvey said, but his voice lacked conviction. We were seeing it, feeling it. It was possible because it was happening. The storm continued to rage. The snow fell thick and white, but that blue light cut through it all, a vertical pillar of impossible brightness pulsing with our hearts. I'm going outside, Harvey said suddenly. Are you insane? That storm will kill you in 5 minutes. Something is out there, something that's affecting us. I need to see it. We can see it from here. No, we can see light. I need to see what's making the light. He headed for the equipment room before I could stop him. I followed, knowing it was stupid, knowing we should stay inside where it was safe, but unable to let him go alone. We suited up quickly. Full Arctic gear, thermal layers, insulated suits, helmets with face shields. We looked like astronauts preparing for a spacewalk. Harvey grabbed a high-powered flashlight. I took the portable radiation detector. If that light was dangerous, we needed to know. The airlock sealed behind us, and we stepped into the storm. The wind hit like a physical force. Even through all my layers, I could feel it trying to push me over. The snow stung any exposed skin around my face shield. The cold was immediate and brutal. Harvey's flashlight barely cut through the whiteout. We could see maybe 10 feet ahead. The blue light was somewhere beyond that, hidden by the driving snow. We moved forward slowly, roped together for safety. Each step was a battle against the wind. The snow was knee-deep in places, drifted by the storm. My radiation detector was silent. No elevated readings. Whatever that light was, it wasn't radioactive. 20 yards from the station, we could see it better. The blue column was massive up close, maybe 20 feet wide, perfectly cylindrical. The edges were sharp, defined, as if someone had taken a laser and carved a hole in the storm. And inside the column, the air was calm. No wind, no snow, just that blue light pulsing steadily, pulsing with our hearts. Harvey stepped closer. I grabbed his arm. Don't. I just want to see. Harvey, we don't know what this is. But he pulled away and moved toward the edge of the light column. I watched, my heart pounding, as he reached out one gloved hand. The moment his hand entered the light, he went rigid. Not convulsing, not in pain, just still, completely motionless. Like someone had pressed pause. Harvey! I grabbed him, tried to pull him back, but it was like trying to move a statue. He was frozen. Then, just as suddenly he stumbled backward. I caught him, keeping him from falling in the deep snow. "What happened? Are you okay?" He didn't answer immediately, just stood there breathing hard, his hand still outstretched. "Harvey?" I felt it. Felt what? Everything. I felt everything. Every heartbeat. Not just mine, yours, and... He paused. Others. "There's no one else out here." "I know." But I felt them, hundreds of heartbeats, maybe thousands, all connected, all synchronized. I looked at the light column. It continued to pulse, 1, 2, 3, like a metronome, like the beating of some cosmic heart. "We need to get back inside," I said. Harvey nodded slowly. He seemed dazed, distant, like part of him was still touching that light. We made our way back to the station, fighting the wind every step. The airlock had never looked so welcoming. Inside, we stripped off our gear in silence. Harvey moved like he was on autopilot, going through the motions, but not really present. "Talk to me," I said. "What did you feel?" He sat down heavily. It's hard to describe. When I touched the light, it was like I was connected to something vast, something alive, not alive like us, but conscious, aware. And it was listening to our hearts, to our rhythms, recording them maybe, or maybe just experiencing them. Did it communicate? Not in words, but I got a sense of curiosity, like it was trying to understand us, figure out what we are. So it's intelligent. I think so. Or it's part of something intelligent, like touching a finger and realizing there's a whole hand, a whole body beyond what you can perceive. I looked out the window. The blue column was still there, pulsing steadily. My heart was still synchronized with it. I could feel it. Every beat, every pulse. "Why our hearts?" I asked. "Why lock onto that specifically? Maybe it's the most basic rhythm we have, the most fundamental. Everything else about us is complex, language, thought, behavior. But a heartbeat is simple, universal. Any living thing understands a heartbeat." We sat there for maybe 30 minutes, watching the light. Neither of us wanted to look away. It felt important, like we were witnessing something that demanded witness. Then Harvey gasped, "What?" He pointed at his chest. "I can feel it, not just synchronized. It's changing. My heartbeat is changing." "What do you mean, changing?" "It's slowing down." "No, that's not right. It's not slowing. It's expanding. Like each beat is taking longer, but somehow still happening at the same speed." That didn't make sense. But when I checked my own pulse, I felt it too. My heartbeat felt stretched, extended, like time itself was elastic, and each beat was pulling against it. The instruments were still dead, but the wall clock in the corner was working. I watched the second hand. It moved normally, steady, mechanical. But my perception of it was wrong. Each second felt too long, or too short. I couldn't tell which. "Time is doing something weird," I said. Harvey nodded. "I feel it too. Like we're out of sync with normal time, like that light is pulling us into a different rhythm." The blue column pulsed. Once, twice, 3 times. My heart beat with it. Harvey's heart beat with it. And somewhere, beyond perception, thousands of other hearts beat with it too. The storm raged on. But inside that column of light, I knew, there was perfect calm. Perfect stillness. A bubble of something other than weather. Other than natural. "We need to measure this," I said, standing up. "If the instruments are dead, we'll use analog equipment. Stopwatches, thermometers. Anything that doesn't require power." Harvey helped me gather what we could. a mechanical stopwatch, a mercury thermometer, a magnetic compass, basic tools that had worked for centuries before electronics. I positioned the compass near the window, pointing at the light column. The needle spun, not slowly, rapidly, clockwise, around and around and around, like the entire magnetic field had gone insane. "That's not right," Harvey said unnecessarily. I checked the thermometer, room temperature, 22 degrees Celsius. Normal. Then I moved it closer to the window. The mercury climbed. 23, 25, 28. The closer to the glass, the higher the temperature, even though outside was minus 40. "The light is generating heat," I said. "Somehow. Through triple-paned windows, through the storm." Harvey was testing the stopwatch, clicking it on and off. "This is working fine. Normal mechanical movement. Then why does it feel like time is wrong?" He had no answer. We went back to the window. The light was still there. Still pulsing. Still synchronized with our hearts. And then, slowly, it began to dim. Not turn off. Just fade. Like someone was lowering the brightness. The blue glow receded, pulling back, contracting into itself. My heart rate started to feel normal again. The stretched sensation faded. Time snapped back into place. Harvey checked his pulse. I'm back to normal rhythm. The compass needle slowed, then stopped, pointing north again. The thermometer reading dropped back to room temperature. And the instruments came back online, all at once. Every LED display lit up. Data started flowing again. Temperature, pressure, wind speed. Everything returning to normal. I checked the logs. They showed a gap. From the moment the light appeared until now, 23 minutes of no data. Just an empty space where information should have been. "It's fading," Harvey said, pointing out the window. He was right. The blue column was barely visible now. Just a faint glow in the storm. Still pulsing, but weakly. Like a dying heartbeat. Then it was gone. The storm continued to rage. The wind screamed. The snow fell. But that impossible light was gone, as if it had never existed. Except we both knew it had. We'd seen it, felt it, been synchronized with it. "What was that?" I whispered. Harvey shook his head. "I don't know, but I don't think it's gone. I think it's still out there, just elsewhere, in some dimension we can't normally perceive." That sounds insane. Everything about tonight is insane. We stayed up the rest of the night watching the storm, waiting for the light to return. It didn't. By morning, the storm had passed. The Arctic sky was clear, filled with aurora. Normal aurora. Green and purple ribbons dancing in the darkness. No blue column. No synchronized heartbeats. No impossible warmth through windows. Just the aftermath of a storm and two people who knew they'd witnessed something beyond explanation. But the really strange part was still to come. When the storm finally broke, Harvey and I suited up to go outside. We needed to see. Needed to know if that light had left any trace, any evidence that it had been real and not some shared hallucination brought on by isolation and darkness. The morning was impossibly clear. That's what happens after Arctic storms. They rage and howl and then vanish, leaving behind skies so clean they hurt to look at. The stars were sharp as broken glass. The aurora had faded to a faint green shimmer on the northern horizon. We walked to where we'd seen the column of light, where Harvey had touched it, where we'd both felt our hearts synchronize with something vast and impossible. The snow was deep from the storm. Our boots crunched through the crust, breaking through to softer powder beneath. Our flashlight beams swept across the white landscape, looking for anything unusual. Harvey saw it first. "Mila, stop." I stopped, looked where he was pointing. 20 yards ahead, the snow was different, not disturbed, not melted in a natural way, just different. We approached carefully. My breath fogged in the cold, minus 43 degrees. Cold enough that the moisture in your breath crystallizes and falls as ice crystals. Cold enough that exposed skin freezes in under a minute. But I barely felt it. All my attention was on the mark in the snow. It was a square. Perfect. Precise. Maybe 15 feet on each side. The edges were sharp, defined to the millimeter. Inside the square, the snow had melted and refrozen into a smooth, glassy surface. Like someone had taken a blowtorch to it, melted it completely, then flash-frozen it into perfect flatness. But it was the shape that was wrong. Circles are natural. Heat radiates in circles. Blast patterns are circular. Anything involving energy dispersing from a point source creates circles. This was a square, perfectly geometric, deliberately artificial. Harvey knelt at the edge, examining it. This isn't from heat. Or if it is, it's heat applied with impossible precision. I pulled out my phone, took photographs. The flash lit up the glassy surface, and I saw something in the reflection. I looked up. Above us, the aurora was dancing. Green ribbons, as always. But there was something else. A faint line of blue, barely visible, extending straight up from the center of the square. A ghost of the column we'd seen during the storm. "Harvey, look up." He did. Saw the blue line. It's still here, just faint, like an after-image. Or like it exists in multiple states, bright when it wants to be seen, faint when it doesn't. We examined the square for another 20 minutes. The surface was warm to the touch. Not hot, but noticeably warmer than the surrounding snow. Maybe 5 degrees above ambient. And there was something else, a smell, faint, like ozone. Like the air after lightning strikes, the smell of ionization, of electricity doing things to atmosphere. I took temperature readings, radiation measurements, everything I could think of. The radiation was slightly elevated, not dangerous, but above background. Similar to what you'd read near a powerful radio transmitter. "What do you think made this?" I asked. Harvey stood, brushing snow from his gloves. "I think whatever was in that light column left this, like a footprint or a burn mark. Physical evidence of something that shouldn't be physical. But why a square? Why not a circle? I don't know. Maybe it's trying to tell us something. Show us it's intelligent. Natural phenomena make circles. Artificial intelligences make geometric shapes." We marked the square with stakes, planning to monitor it over the coming days. See if it changed, if it faded, if something else happened. Then we returned to the station. The airlock had never felt so much like returning to safety. Inside was warm, controlled, normal. Out there, in the Arctic darkness, things happened that defied normal. We stripped off our gear and headed for the monitoring room. I needed to check the data logs, see what the instruments had recorded during those 23 minutes of blackout. But when I entered the monitoring room, I stopped. The clock on the wall was wrong. Not stopped, not running backward. Just wrong. The hour hand pointed to 3, the minute hand pointed to 47. Both hands were where they should be. But they were also wrong, because according to my watch the time was 7:15, and both were correct. I stared at the clock, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. The hands were in 2 positions simultaneously, pointing at 3:47 and at 7:15 at the same time. "Harvey, look at this." He came over, saw the clock, and went very still. "That's not possible." I know. The hands can't be in two places at once. I know. But they were. I could see both positions. Not overlaid, not blurred, both fully present. Both solid, both real. The second hand continued to sweep around the face, normally, mechanically, ticking off seconds in its usual rhythm. But the hour and minute hands existed in two states. This is a quantum effect, Harvey said slowly. Like Schrodinger's cat. Existing in multiple states until observed. Except we're observing it, and it's still in multiple states. Then, maybe the rules changed. Maybe whatever that light was, it altered something fundamental. Made it so things can be in two places, two times simultaneously. I checked my watch. It showed 7:15. Normal? Running correctly. I checked the digital clock on the computer. It showed 7:15. Normal. Only the analog wall clock showed both times. Why this clock? I asked. Why not the digital ones? Maybe digital doesn't work the same way. Digital time is discrete, on or off, 1 or 0. Analog is continuous, flowing. Maybe that makes it susceptible to whatever this is. I took photographs. The camera captured both positions. In the image, the clock hands were clearly pointing at two different times. Evidence that couldn't be explained away. We tried to adjust the clock. Harvey reached up, opened the face, and tried to move the hands manually. They wouldn't move. Not stuck, not frozen. They moved when he pushed them, sweeping around the face normally. But the moment he released them, they snapped back to both positions. 3:47 and 7:15, both simultaneously present. It's locked, he said. Locked into showing both times, like those moments are equally real. What happened at 3:47? I asked. During the storm? Harvey pulled up the logs on the computer. According to the timestamps, that's when the instruments went dark. 3:47 a.m., 23 minutes before they came back online at 4:10. So the clock is showing when the event started and when it ended. Both at once. Like the clock experienced both moments simultaneously. Like for it, both times are present tense. We sat there, staring at the impossible clock. Two times. One mechanism. Both real. We need to document everything, I said finally. The square in the snow, the clock, the synchronized heartbeats, all of it. And send it where? To headquarters? They'll think we're having a shared psychotic episode. Maybe. But we have evidence. Photographs, data logs, physical marks in the snow. Harvey nodded slowly. Okay, we document, we report, and we see what happens. We spent the rest of the day compiling everything. I wrote a detailed account of the event. Harvey created a timeline. We collected all the photographs, all the measurements, all the data. The report was 15 pages long, clinical, objective, just the facts, presented without speculation or interpretation. We sent it via satellite uplink to Northern Operations Headquarters. The response came 12 hours later. Report received, interesting data, continue standard monitoring, research team will review and respond within 72 hours. That was it. No alarm, no immediate evacuation. No questions, just acknowledgement and a promise of review. They don't believe us, Harvey said. Or they do, and they're not surprised. What do you mean? I mean, maybe this has happened before. Maybe other stations have reported similar things, and maybe there's a protocol for dealing with it that involves not panicking the personnel. Harvey considered that. That's a disturbing thought. More disturbing than a square melted into snow by something that synchronized our heartbeats. Point taken. That night, we took turns watching the windows. Neither of us wanted to sleep. Neither of us wanted to miss it if the light returned. Around 2 a.m. during my watch, I saw something. Not the blue column, something else. The aurora was active. Normal green curtains rippling across the sky, but among the green there were threads of blue, thin lines woven into the aurora like someone sewing with light. And they were pulsing, not synchronized with my heartbeat this time. Faster, a different rhythm, but definitely pulsing, deliberately. I called Harvey. He joined me at the window. "See the blue threads?" I asked. "Yeah, that's not normal aurora." "No." We watched for an hour. The blue threads moved through the aurora, weaving patterns. Geometric patterns. Squares, triangles, hexagons. Shapes that aurora doesn't make naturally. "It's still here," Harvey said quietly. "Whatever it is. It didn't leave, it's showing itself in different ways. Trying to communicate, maybe. Or just existing. Maybe it's always been here, in the Arctic, in the aurora, and we're only now learning to see it." The thought was profound and terrifying. The idea that something vast and intelligent had been hiding in plain sight, in one of the most studied natural phenomena on Earth, and we'd never noticed because we weren't looking properly. "We should go outside," I said. "See if we can see it better from there." Harvey hesitated. "Is that safe?" "Probably not, but we're here to observe, to record. This is what we do." We suited up again. Our third trip into the Arctic night in 24 hours. We were both exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee, and the knowledge that we were witnessing something unprecedented. Outside, the aurora was magnificent. The green curtains filled the sky, rippling and dancing in solar wind, and threaded through them, those blue lines. Geometric, deliberate. I tilted my head back, watching. The patterns shifted, changed, evolved, like watching a language written in light. Harvey was standing next to me, also looking up. "Do you feel anything? Like last night?" I checked my pulse. Normal. No synchronization. Not this time. Maybe it's done with that phase. Maybe it learned what it needed to learn about us. So, what is this? The next phase? Maybe. Or maybe it's showing us something. Sharing information in the only way it can. We watched for another 30 minutes. The blue threads continued their geometric dance. Then, slowly, they began to fade. Not disappear. Just dim. Receding into the background of normal aurora. By 3 a.m. they were gone. Just green aurora remained. Normal, natural. The way it had been for thousands of years before we arrived. We returned to the station. Harvey went to bed, too exhausted to stay awake any longer. I stayed up, watching the monitors, waiting for something else to happen. At 3:47 a.m., the lights flickered. Just once. A brief dimming, so fast I almost missed it. I looked at the wall clock. Both hands were still in their dual positions. 3:47 and 7:15. And then I understood. The clock wasn't broken. It wasn't showing 2 times randomly. It was showing a loop, a connection. 3:47 a.m. was when the event started, and every time that moment came around again, the clock marked it, remembered it, like a scar in time. I wrote this down in my log, noted the time, the flicker, the theory. Then I went to check on the square in the snow. I pulled up the external cameras, pointed one at the marked location. The square was still there, still glassy, still perfectly geometric. But now there was something in the center of it. A shape, small, dark, about the size of my hand. "Harvey!" I called out. "Harvey, wake up!" He appeared in the doorway, groggy. "What is it?" Something appeared in the square. We need to go look. We were outside 10 minutes later, approaching the square carefully. Our flashlight beams converged on the dark shape in the center. It was a stone. No, not a stone. Too perfect, too smooth. A disc, maybe 6 inches in diameter, perfectly circular, black as the Arctic night, but with a surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Harvey knelt beside it. This wasn't here before. I know. I checked the cameras. It appeared between 2 frames. One moment, nothing. Next moment, this. He reached for it, then hesitated. Should I touch it? I don't know, but we need to know what it is. Harvey pulled off his glove, exposing his hand to the cold. He touched the disc. It was warm. It's generating heat, he said. Like the square, like the light column. He picked it up. The disc was heavier than it looked. Dense. Like it was made of something impossibly compressed. And on the bottom surface there were markings. Not writing, not symbols, just patterns. Geometric shapes, circles within squares within triangles, layered, interconnected. It's a message, I said, or a gift, or evidence, something left deliberately. Harvey turned it over in his hands. Something left by what we saw, by that intelligence, proof that it was real. We brought it inside, placed it on the examination table under bright lights, photographed it from every angle, measured it, tested it with every instrument we had. The disc was exactly 6 inches in diameter, exactly 1 inch thick, perfectly circular, perfectly smooth. The geometric patterns on one side were etched to a depth of exactly 1 millimeter. Everything about it screamed artificial, manufactured, designed. But by what? By whom? The material was unknown. Not metal, not ceramic, not polymer. Something else. Something our instruments couldn't identify. Denser than lead. Harder than diamond. And still warm to the touch hours after we'd brought it inside. This changes everything, Harvey said quietly. Yeah. This is proof. Physical, tangible proof that something intelligent is out here. Will anyone believe us? They'll have to. You can dismiss reports, you can question photographs, but this is an object, something they can hold, test, study. I wasn't so sure, but I hoped he was right. We added the disc to our report, sent updated photographs and measurements to headquarters. The response this time was different. Hold position, research team en route. ETA 36 hours. Secure the object. Do not continue external investigations without support. This is now a Level 3 event. Level 3. I'd never heard that term before, but the tone of the message made it clear. This was serious. This was being taken seriously. But 36 hours is a long time when you're sitting with an impossible object and a clock that shows 2 times at once. Harvey and I decided to continue documenting, not investigating exactly, just observing. Surely, headquarters couldn't object to observation. The disc sat on the examination table, and we set up a camera to record it continuously. If it did anything at all, we wanted it captured. For the first 12 hours, nothing happened. The disc remained inert. Warm, but unchanging. The geometric patterns on its surface stayed the same. No new markings appeared. No lights. No pulses. Harvey spent those hours trying different things. He placed a compass next to the disc. The needle spun slowly, never settling on north, just rotating clockwise. 1 full revolution every 47 seconds. Precise. Mechanical. Like it was responding to some field we couldn't otherwise detect. 47, Harvey said. Like 3:47, the time the event started. You think the numbers mean something? Everything about this means something. Nothing is random. I tried placing my hand near the disk, not touching it, just close. I could feel the warmth radiating from it. But there was something else, too. A vibration. Not physical. More like a sensation. Like standing near a large speaker playing a note too low to hear, but felt in your chest. "Do you feel that?" I asked Harvey. He moved his hand near the disk. "Yeah, like it's humming, but silent." "What's it doing?" "I don't know. Maybe it's always doing this. Maybe this is what it is. An object that exists partially in our reality and partially in another. The hum is where they overlap." I pulled my hand back. The sensation faded immediately. "That's unsettling." Most of this is unsettling. Around hour 15, something changed. I was checking the perimeter sensors when I noticed an anomaly in the seismic data. Small vibrations, regular, rhythmic, coming from the direction of the square in the snow. "Harvey, look at this." He came over, studied the readout. "That's not natural. Earthquakes are random, chaotic. This is patterned." The vibrations pulsed in groups. 3 short pulses, 2 long, then a pause, repeating, over and over. "It's the same pattern as the EMF readings we got," Harvey said. "Remember? At the square. 3 short, 2 long. So it's still active out there, still doing something. Or trying to communicate. That pattern could be deliberate, a signal." I recorded the seismic data, noting the pattern. 3 short, 2 long. If it was communication, we had no way to respond. No way to say, "We hear you." Or did we? "What if we go out there," I said slowly, "to the square? What if we create the same pattern? 3 short pulses, 2 long. Show them we understood." "How would we create pulses?" "Lights. We have the emergency flares. We could light them in sequence. 3 short burns, 2 long." Harvey considered this. "Headquarters said not to continue external investigations." "We wouldn't be investigating. We'd be responding. There's a difference." "Is there?" "I don't know, but I need to try." We debated for another hour. The risks were obvious. We could be misinterpreting the pattern. We could be inviting something dangerous. We could be violating protocols that existed for good reasons. But in the end, curiosity won. It always does. We suited up and took 5 emergency flares outside. The Arctic night was clear. The aurora danced overhead, just green ribbons. No blue threads. The square was visible in the starlight, that glassy surface reflecting the sky. We stood at the edge of the square. Harvey had the flares. I had my camera, recording everything. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." He lit the first flare. Bright red light flared up, burning for exactly 5 seconds before he extinguished it in the snow. Short, he lit another, 5 seconds, short, a third, 5 seconds, short. Then he lit the 4th flare and let it burn for 15 seconds. Long. The 5th flare. 15 seconds, long, 3 short, 2 long. The pattern complete. We stood there in the darkness, the smoke from the flares drifting away on the wind. Waiting. For what, we didn't know. A response? A reaction? Nothing at all? At first nothing, just wind and stars and that glassy square reflecting the sky. Then the aurora changed. The green ribbons overhead shifted, consolidated, formed a pattern. 3 bright pulses, each lasting a few seconds. Then 2 longer, sustained glows, 3 short, 2 long, the same pattern, reflected back to us. "Oh my God," Harvey whispered. It answered. We watched the aurora pulse the pattern 3 more times. Then it dissolved back into normal curtains of green light. Random. natural, as if it had never been anything else, but we'd seen it, recorded it. The intelligence in the aurora had responded to our signal, had shown us it was listening, understanding, communicating. We returned to the station in silence. There were no words adequate for what we'd just experienced. We'd made contact. Actual, deliberate contact with something non-human. Inside, we reviewed the footage. The aurora's response was clear, undeniable. We'd sent a pattern, and it had been returned to us. "We need to tell headquarters," I said. "Tell them what? That we violated their direct order not to investigate? That we initiated contact with an unknown intelligence? They need to know this thing responds, that it's interactive, that it's not just observing, it's communicating." Harvey nodded slowly. "Okay, but let's wait until the research team arrives. Let them see the footage, experience it directly. You think it'll respond again?" "I think it's been trying to respond all along. We just didn't know how to listen." We added the new footage to our documentation. The seismic patterns, the flare sequence, the aurora's response. Everything carefully logged and time-stamped, and then we waited. Hour 20 brought another change. I was in the monitoring room when I noticed the temperature dropping. Not outside. Inside, the station was getting colder. I checked the heating system, functioning normally. Thermostat set to 20 degrees Celsius, but the actual temperature was 18 degrees, 17, 16. "Harvey, the heater's losing ground." He checked the power systems. "Everything's working. We're generating heat. It's just not staying." The temperature continued to drop, 15 degrees, 14. We could see our breath now, small clouds in the monitoring room. "Where's the heat going?" I asked. Harvey moved to the wall clock. The impossible clock showing 2 times. He held his hand near it. "Here, the heat's going here. The clock is cold. Colder than it should be. Like it's absorbing thermal energy." I joined him. He was right. The clock face was cold to the touch. Not freezing, but noticeably colder than room temperature. And getting colder. "It's pulling heat from the air," Harvey said. "Using it somehow, converting it to something else. Energy can't be destroyed, only converted." "Right, so the question is, what's it being converted into?" As if in answer, the clock hands moved. Not both of them, just the minute hand pointing at 7:15. It shifted, slowly, incrementing backward. 7:13, 7:13, 7:12, moving toward 3:47, moving toward the other hand, like they were trying to converge. "It's synchronizing," I said. "The 2 times, they're trying to meet. But they can't. 3:47 is in the past. 7:15 is in the future. They're 4 hours and 28 minutes apart. Unless time isn't linear. Unless both moments are equally present, equally real." The temperature stabilized at 12 degrees. Cold, but not dangerously so. The minute hand stopped at 7:10, still separated from 3:47, but closer, much closer. "What happens if they meet?" Harvey asked quietly. "I don't know. Maybe nothing, maybe everything." We watched the clock for another hour. The hands didn't move again. The temperature stayed at 12 degrees, like the system had found an equilibrium, a balance between the 2 times. At hour 30, the disk started glowing. Not brightly, just a faint luminescence, that same electric blue from the light column, pulsing slowly, 1 pulse every 10 seconds or so. Harvey and I moved to the examination table. The disk pulsed in its rhythm, and I realized something. "Count the pulses," I said. He did. 10 seconds apart, 6 per minute. And the hands on the clock, The minute hand at 7:10, the hour hand at 3:47. What's the distance between them? Harvey calculated. 3 hours and 23 minutes, 203 minutes. And if the disk is pulsing every 10 seconds, 6 times per minute, how many pulses to count out 203 minutes? He stared at me. 1,218 pulses. It's counting. The disk is counting down the time between the 2 moments shown on the clock. Counting down to what? To when they meet. To when both times become the same time. We watched the disk pulse. Counted. At 6 pulses per minute, 203 minutes would take over 33 hours. The research team would arrive before that. But what would happen when the countdown completed? When the 2 times converged? I didn't know, but I felt certain it was important. That whatever intelligence left the disk, left the clock in its impossible state, was building toward something. A moment, an event. We should try to communicate again, Harvey said. While we can, before they arrive and take control. How? The disk is pulsing. 1 pulse every 10 seconds. What if we respond? Match its rhythm. Show it we understand. With what? He thought for a moment. Our heartbeats. It synchronized with our hearts before, during the storm, when the light column was here. Maybe that's the language. Biological rhythm. You want to match our heartbeat to the disk's pulse? Why not? It's just meditation, breathing exercises. Athletes do it all the time. Control your heart rate through conscious effort. It sounded insane, but everything about this situation was insane. We sat in front of the disk, watched it pulse. 1 pulse every 10 seconds, 6 per minute. That meant a heart rate of 6 beats per minute. Impossibly slow. Normal human heart rate is 60 to 100 beats per minute. We can't slow our hearts that much, I said. No, but we can try to synchronize on a multiple. If the disk pulses once every 10 seconds, we could beat once every second. 10 times faster, but still harmonic, still connected. We tried, slowing our breathing, focusing, trying to feel our heartbeats and control them. It took 20 minutes, but gradually I felt it. My heart rate slowing, 60 beats per minute, 50, 40, settling into a rhythm, 1 beat per second. Harvey achieved it too. I could see his chest rising and falling in the slow rhythm. 1 breath every 6 seconds. 1 heartbeat in between each breath. And the disk responded. Its pulse changed, accelerated. 1 every 5 seconds instead of 10. Then 1 every 2 seconds. Rising to meet us, finding a harmonic between our rhythm and its own. It's working, Harvey breathed. It feels us, adjusts to us. The disk glowed brighter, still blue, but more intense. And I felt it again, that connection, that synchronization, my heart beating with the disk pulsing with my heart. A feedback loop of biological and artificial rhythm. In that moment, I understood something. This wasn't communication in words. It was communion, a sharing of fundamental rhythm, of existence. The intelligence behind the disk wasn't trying to talk to us in language. It was trying to resonate with us, to find the frequency where human and other could meet, could touch, could understand each other through pure rhythm. Tears ran down my face. I don't know why. Maybe the beauty of it. Maybe the profundity. Maybe just the overwhelming sense of connection with something so alien yet so fundamentally similar. We all had heartbeats. Humans, animals, maybe even stars had rhythms, galaxies. The universe itself pulsing in ways too vast to perceive, but fundamentally the same as the small thud in my chest. The disk pulsed. My heart answered, back and forth. A conversation without words, a dialogue of rhythm. After 15 minutes, exhaustion set in. I couldn't maintain the slow heart rate anymore. Neither could Harvey. Our rhythms accelerated back to normal. 70 beats per minute. 80. The disk's pulse slowed back to its original rhythm. 1 every 10 seconds. But I felt different. Changed. Like something inside me had been tuned to a new frequency. "Did you feel that?" Harvey asked. "Yeah." "What was it?" I think that's what it wants. That connection. That shared rhythm. Maybe that's all it ever wanted. To find something else in the universe that pulses. That beats. That's alive. So we're not a threat to it. We're interesting. Like finding another musician when you thought you were the only one who knew music. Maybe. We sat in silence, recovering. The experience had been exhausting. Beautiful, but draining. Like we'd run a marathon, but spiritually instead of physically. The disk continued its countdown pulse. 1 every 10 seconds. Marking time toward some convergence we couldn't predict. 6 hours before the research team arrived, something else happened. I woke from a brief sleep to find Harvey standing at the window, staring out at the darkness. "What is it?" I asked. "Look." I joined him. Outside, in the distance, Aurora danced, but it wasn't alone. There were lights. Multiple lights. Blue columns, like the one we'd seen during the storm. But smaller, fainter. Maybe a dozen of them scattered across the tundra, each one pulsing. Each one vertical. Each one impossibly bright against the darkness. "They're everywhere," Harvey whispered. "It's not just here, it's all around us. The entire area." I grabbed the camera, started recording. The columns of light pulsed in sequence. Not synchronized, staggered. Like they were passing signals to each other. Communicating. A network of light across the frozen landscape. "This is what it's been building to," I said. "The disk, the clock, the countdown. Something big is happening. They're gathering. Or waking up, maybe they're always here, dormant. And occasionally they activate. Reach out. Try to connect." We watched the lights for 2 hours. They pulsed and danced, sometimes shifting position. Sometimes fading and reappearing elsewhere. A choreography of impossible physics playing out across the Arctic night. And through it all, the disk continued its countdown. The clock hands remained frozen in their impossible dual positions. And we watched, witnessed, recorded. Because that's all we could do. All anyone could do when faced with something so far beyond understanding. Watch. Document. Hope to glimpse some small truth in the impossible. The research team would arrive soon. They'd take the disk, classify everything, make it official and secret at the same time. But for now, it was ours. This moment, this experience, this knowledge that we'd touched something vast. Something that existed in the spaces between heartbeats and seconds, between possible and impossible. And whatever happened next, that couldn't be taken away. The 36 hours before the research team arrived were the longest of my life. Harvey and I took turns watching the disk. It sat on the examination table, perfectly still, perfectly silent. But I couldn't shake the feeling it was watching us back. That whatever intelligence had left it was observing through it somehow, seeing how we reacted, what we did. The disk remained warm, never cooling, never heating up, just maintaining a constant temperature about 10 degrees above room temperature. No power source visible, no mechanisms, just smooth, dark surface and those geometric patterns. Harvey spent hours studying the patterns, trying to find meaning, trying to decode them like some ancient language. "Look at this," he said on the second day, pointing at the etched circles and triangles. These aren't random, they're mathematical. See how each shape is proportional to the others? The circle's diameter equals the triangle's base. The square's area equals the sum of the smaller shapes. So it's showing mathematical relationships. More than that, it's showing that it understands mathematics, geometry, universal constants. This is a message saying we think, we calculate, we're intelligent. Or it's just a pretty pattern. You don't believe that. I didn't. The disk was too perfect, too deliberate, too impossible to be anything but a deliberate communication from something that wanted us to know it existed. On the second night, at exactly 3:47 a.m., the lights flickered again, and the disk pulsed, just once. A brief glow from within, like someone had turned on a light inside it and immediately turned it off. The glow was blue, that same electric blue from the column of light. Harvey and I were both awake, both watching. We saw it happen. It's reacting, he said, to the time, to 3:47. The moment the event started. Like it's connected to that moment, locked into it somehow. I checked the wall clock, still showing both times. 3:47 and 7:15, like it was trapped in a loop between those two moments. Between beginning and end. The disk pulsed again. Twice this time. Then fell dark. Is it trying to tell us something? I asked. Maybe. Or maybe it's just activated by proximity to the event. Like it's linked to that column of light. When the anniversary of the moment comes around, it responds. But it's only been 2 days. How can there be an anniversary? Harvey was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if time works differently for them? What if their concept of cycles and repetition isn't based on days or years, but on something else? Some other measurement we don't understand. That's terrifying. Most of this is terrifying. We documented the pulse, photographed it, timed it, added it to our growing file of impossible things. At dawn on the third day, we heard the helicopters. 2 of them, heavy transport models, the kind used for moving equipment and personnel across the Arctic. They landed 50 yards from the station, their rotors kicking up snow and wind. 6 people emerged, 4 in military uniforms, 2 in civilian cold weather gear. The civilians came to the station. The military personnel began setting up equipment around the landing zone. The lead civilian was a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and the confident movement of someone used to hostile environments. She introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Khatri, lead researcher for something called Northern Anomalies Division. I've read your reports, she said without preamble. All of them. Show me the disk. We led her to the examination table. She studied the disk for a full minute without touching it, just looking. Then she pulled on gloves and picked it up, turning it over, examining the patterns. Remarkable, she said quietly. Absolutely remarkable. What is it? I asked. Do you know? We've seen similar objects before, not identical, but similar. Geometric patterns, unknown materials, anomalous thermal properties. This is the most complete specimen we've found. You found others? She looked at me. There have been 17 documented cases of unusual phenomena in Arctic research stations over the past 20 years. Lights, missing time, synchronized physiological responses. And in 4 of those cases, objects were left behind. Small, geometric, impossible. Why didn't you tell us? Harvey asked. Why let us think we were alone in this? Because knowledge changes behavior. If we tell every station worker about previous encounters, they start looking for them, expecting them, and that expectation can contaminate observations. We need pure data, unbiased witnesses. So we were test subjects, I said flatly. You were observers, and you did an excellent job. Your documentation is thorough, professional, exactly what we needed. What do you need it for? Dr. Khatri set the disc back on the table. To understand. We don't know what these things are, where they come from, what they want. All we know is they appear in remote locations. They interact with humans in specific ways, and they leave evidence behind. Are they extraterrestrial? Harvey asked. We don't know. Maybe. Or maybe they're terrestrial, but from a reality layer we don't normally perceive. Maybe they're interdimensional. Or maybe they're something else entirely. Something we don't have words for yet. But they're intelligent, I said. Yes, that much is certain. The geometric patterns, the mathematical precision, the apparent ability to manipulate time and perception, all of that suggests sophisticated intelligence. And what do they want? That, Dr. Khatri said, is what we're trying to figure out. She spent the next hour examining everything. The disc, the wall clock still showing 2 times, the photographs of the square in the snow. She asked detailed questions about our experiences, the synchronized heartbeats, the feeling Harvey described when he touched the light column. Then she had us take her to the site. The square was still there. Still glassy. Still warm. Dr. Khatri's team set up sensors around it, taking readings. One of them produced a device I'd never seen before. Something that looked like a modified EMF detector, but more complex. Temporal fluctuations, the technician said, reading the display. Elevated by factor of 7, this area is definitely experiencing nonlinear time effects. Can you quantify that? Dr. Khatri asked. Time is running approximately 0.03% faster in the center of the square than at the edges. Tiny, but measurable. Like there's a bubble of different time flow. And the disk was in the center, Harvey said. Exactly. Whatever left the disk left it in the area of maximum temporal distortion. We returned to the station. Dr. Khatri's team carefully packed the disk in a specialized container, cushioned and insulated. They were taking it. Of course, they were taking it. It was too important to leave. What happens now? I asked. You continue your work here, Dr. Khatri said. Standard monitoring. We'll install some additional sensors, and if anything else happens, anything at all, you report it immediately. You think it'll come back? We don't know. Some sites experience single events. Others have recurring phenomena. You're the ones who were here. What do you think? I looked at Harvey. He looked at me. We'd both felt it. That sense of being observed, of being studied, of being part of something larger. It'll be back, I said. Dr. Khatri nodded. Then we'll be monitoring, and you'll be our eyes on the ground. The helicopters left an hour later, taking the disc and most of the team. They left behind 2 military personnel and a pile of new equipment. Sensors that fed data directly to wherever Dr. Khatri's Northern Anomalies Division was based. Harvey and I were alone again, but it felt different now. We weren't isolated observers. We were part of something, part of a network of people watching the Arctic darkness for signs of the impossible. That night, the aurora was active again. Green curtains filling the sky, but no blue threads. No geometric patterns, just normal, beautiful aurora. We watched anyway, just in case. At 3:47 a.m., the lights didn't flicker. The wall clock continued showing both times, but nothing else happened. No pulses, no manifestations, just the quiet hum of the station and the eternal Arctic night. Do you think we'll see it again? Harvey asked. I think it's always there, I said. We just can't always see it. Like radio waves, always present, but you need the right equipment to detect them. And sometimes we're the right equipment. Yeah. We fell into our routine again, monitoring weather, recording data, living in the Arctic darkness. But everything was different now. Every strange reading, every anomalous measurement, every time the aurora danced a little too geometrically. We wondered, is it back? Is it watching? Is it trying to communicate? 3 weeks after the event, I was doing routine maintenance outside, checking the sensor array on the northern perimeter. The aurora was active, just green. Normal. I finished the maintenance and was heading back when I felt it. That sensation, like being watched, like something vast was aware of me. I turned, looked up at the aurora, and for just a moment I saw it, a thread of blue, vertical, faint, barely visible against the green curtains. It pulsed, once, twice. My heart rate didn't change, no synchronization this time. But I felt acknowledged, seen. The blue faded. The aurora returned to normal. I went back inside and logged it. Timestamp, description, observation. Harvey read it and nodded. It's keeping tabs on us. Or saying hello. Same thing, maybe. Over the following months, we had 3 more sightings. Never as dramatic as that first night. Just glimpses. Blue threads in the aurora, faint pulses of light in the distance. Once, Harvey swore he saw the square in the snow glow briefly during a storm. Each time, we documented it, sent the reports to Dr. Khatri's division. Each time we got the same response. Acknowledged, continue monitoring. The wall clock never returned to normal. It continued showing both times, 3:47 and 7:15, a permanent reminder of the event. We left it as it was, a monument to the impossible. I think about that night often, about touching the edge of something vast, something intelligent, something that exists in ways we don't understand. Harvey and I talk about it sometimes late at night when the aurora is dancing. We wonder what it learned from us, what it took away from synchronizing with our heartbeats, from leaving us that disk. And we wonder what it's planning, because something that sophisticated doesn't just observe randomly. It has purpose, goals, plans that span scales we can't comprehend. Are we part of those plans? Or just interesting specimens? Lab rats in a cosmic experiment? I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. But I do know this. The Arctic is not empty. The darkness is not void. There are things in the aurora, things in the spaces between, things that watch and wait and occasionally reach out to touch us. And once you've felt that touch, once you've synchronized your heartbeat with something vast and unknowable, you're never quite the same. You see the world differently. You understand that reality is thinner than we think, that the boundaries between possible and impossible are permeable, that we share this universe with intelligences we barely understand. Harvey is finishing his rotation next month, moving to a station in Antarctica. They've had similar phenomena there. Blue lights, geometric patterns in ice, time distortions. He wants to see if it's the same thing. If the intelligence in the Arctic aurora is the same as whatever dances above Antarctica. If there's a global network of these things watching humanity from the poles. I'm staying here, at Echo 12, with my wall clock showing 2 times, with my memories of synchronized heartbeats and blue columns of light. With my certainty that I've touched something profound. Dr. Khatri emails me sometimes, updates on the research. The disk is being studied at a facility I'm not cleared to know about. The material is still unidentified. The patterns are still being decoded. But they found something interesting. The geometric etchings aren't just mathematics. They're also a map of something. They don't know what yet. Maybe the Earth. Maybe the solar system. Maybe something larger. Maybe it's showing us where they're from, or where they're going. or where we are in relation to something we can't perceive. I look at the aurora every night now, watching for blue threads, for geometric patterns, for signs that it's back, that it remembers us. And sometimes at exactly 3:47 a.m., when the lights briefly flicker and time feels strange, I think I hear it. Not with my ears, with something deeper, some part of me that synchronized with something vast during that storm. A pulse, a rhythm, a vast heartbeat echoing across dimensions. And I know it's still out there, still watching, still waiting. The Arctic keeps its secrets, but it also shares them with those brave enough or foolish enough to watch, to witness, to open themselves to the impossible. I am one of those people now, changed by what I saw, by what I felt, by what I know exists in the darkness. The aurora dances every night. Green and purple ribbons painting the Arctic sky. And woven into those ribbons, visible only to those who know how to look, are threads of blue. Geometric, deliberate, intelligent. A message written in light, a language we're only beginning to understand. And in my station, on my wall, a clock shows 2 times. Both real, both present, both marking the moment when reality opened and showed us something beyond. 3:47 a.m., the moment it began. 7:15 a.m., the moment it ended. Or maybe they're the same moment, viewed from different angles, different dimensions, different states of existence. Maybe that's what the clock is really showing us. That time isn't linear, that moments can overlap, that everything happens at once if you know how to look. Maybe that's what they're trying to teach us. Or maybe I'm reading too much into an anomalous clock. Maybe it's just broken. Maybe we're just 2 people who experience something strange and are trying to make sense of it. But I don't think so. Because every night at 3:47 a.m., when the lights briefly flicker and time feels elastic, I feel it. That connection, that synchronization, my heartbeat, matching something vast. A pulse in the darkness, a rhythm beyond time. And I know, with absolute certainty, that we are not alone in the Arctic night. We never have been. We've just finally learned to see.